Hello everyone. Uther the Lightbringer was a servant of the Holy Light, one of the first paladins of the Silver Hand, and his heroic deeds have earned him a place not only in Warcraft, but also in Hearthstone and in Heroes of the Storm. Who is this man and what has he done in his lifetime? That's what we're going to find out, so let's begin, shall we? Not much is known about Uther's youth, except that he was drawn to the light at a very early age, and he met Arthas when he was just a bishop. Arthas served as Uther's spiritual advisor and mentor, and Uther was a very skilled warrior. The first time that we really see him in the story is after the moment that the orcs destroyed Stormwind and the people fled to Liadrin. Amongst those people were young Varian Rin, Khadgar, and Anduin Lothar. They warned King Tyrannus Manethil II about the threat of the Horde, that the world had to unite against them if they wanted to stand a chance. The first alliance was born from this, and it was Archbishop Arthas who came up with the idea of adding paladins to their ranks. He had heard how the Northshire clerics had fallen to the might of the Horde, and he realized that they needed something more in order to stand against them. Combine the teachings of the church with the skills of a warrior in order to create the first paladins of the Silver Hand. These paladins were Uther, Saidan Davrohan, Tyrion Fordring, Gavin Raad, and Tyrellian. From all these paladins, Tyrellian was chosen to become one of Lothar's lieutenants, while Uther became the leader of the paladins. The paladins would turn out to be a huge success, some of the most powerful troops the Alliance had to offer, essential in the victory over the Horde, since the Horde had started to add Death Knights into their ranks. These Death Knights did terrible damage to the Alliance troops, but they were no match for the radiance of the Holy Light. The first time that the Death Knights showed up on the battlefield, Uther told his fellow men that the Holy Light would protect them. From his prayers, the light enveloped the troops, protecting them from the dark magic and giving them a chance against the Death Knights. The paladins also assisted Lothar as he led the troops against the Horde, and they were the ones who cleared Liadrin of the remaining orcs when they failed to take the city. The paladins were also there in the final moments of the war, right outside of Black Rock Mountain. By that time the Horde was pushed back, and this was the staging ground of their final major battle. The Alliance thought that they would have time to prepare for this battle, but the Horde wouldn't let them, and they struck out on all fronts. Uther took his men, he prayed to the light, and he empowered them, giving them the strength to stand against the barbaric Horde. In the end, it was Tyrellian who found his faith in the light, and he used its powers to defeat Orgrim Doomhammer. Orgrim had already killed Lothar by this point, and Tyrellian took up command over the Alliance army, and he gave Uther the title of Lightbringer. For so you shall be known henceforth, in honor of the Holy Light you brought us this day. They then followed the fleeing orcs all the way back to the Dark Portal, and they destroyed the portal itself, cutting Draenor off from Azeroth and saving the world, at least for that moment. Several years later, the Dark Portal would reopen, and Tyrellian would rally the Sons of Lothar to take the battle to the Orcs, their home planet. By that time, Uther had taken up a different role, and he now used his powers to heal the people within the Cathedral of Light. We read about him at the start of the story, as he had just helped a woman give birth to a child, but for the rest of the story, he didn't really play a part. Instead, we later find him in Liadrin, teaching the child of the king how to become a righteous and noble paladin. The child that would later become one of the greatest threats to Azeroth, namely Arthas. It wasn't easy to teach Arthas about the ways of the light. As a young boy, he would rather go and ride his horse Invincible than stay inside and pray. Nonetheless, Uther did his very best to teach him, and once Arthas had finished his training with Muradin, he started his training with Uther. Uther's training wasn't so much about swordplay itself, but more about the attitude and respect someone brought to the battlefield. Being righteous and holy doesn't stop when someone leaves the church. They take it with them in all aspects of their life, and he tried to teach Arthas these values. Arthas found that both teachings had value, and after many years the day had come that he would become a Knight of the Silver Hand. Arthas felt like he didn't deserve the honor, and he told Uther about his feelings. The intimidating paladin, who since Arthas was old enough to remember, had been the very image of rock-solid steadfastness to the light, had startled the prince with his reply. Lad, no one feels ready. No one feels he deserves it. And you know why? Because no one does. It's grace, pure and simple. We are inherently unworthy, simply because we're human. And all human beings, I and elves and dwarves and all the other races, are flawed. But the light loves us anyway. It loves us for what we sometimes can rise to in rare moments. It loves us for what we can do to help others. And it loves us because we can help it share its message by striving daily to be worthy, even though we understand that we can't ever truly become so. With that wisdom, Arthas took his vows, and it was Uther himself who placed his ceremonial armor on his shoulders. Arthas had known Uther to be a steady man, but in that moment, his eyes were full with unshed tears. Uther loved Arthas dearly, and in that moment, Arthas had made him very proud. We'll get back to Arthas in a moment, but first there's another story in which Uther played a part. Tirion Fordring, one of the original paladins from the Order of the Silver Hand, was dragged into court. He had met the orc Yrel, who was hiding in his lands, and they battled with each other. During that battle, they ended up in a tower which collapsed on top of Tirion. Yrel was a very honorable orc, and slaying a human who couldn't defend himself was not his style. So he placed Tirion on top of his horse, and he made the horse bring him back to the keep, where he could recover from the wounds. This story is told in the novel Blood and Honor, and throughout the story Tirion and Yrel get to know each other and to develop respect for each other. Tirion felt in debt to the orc, and he made him a promise. On his honor, he would protect the orc and let him live out his days in his land. Yrel promised him on his honor that he was done with the war and he just wanted to live out his days. This might not seem strange now with all the orc interaction that we have in Warcraft, but back in the day, this was an insane concept. Orcs were seen as nothing but savage monsters who tried to take over Azeroth, which in all fairness, they were from the humans' point of view. From their interaction, Tirion found out that there was more to it, but his people, they were stuck in their mindset. They wanted Yrel dead, so they told Tirion to do his duty, to show them the way, to lead them to where he last saw Yrel. Tirion had no choice. He did this because he had to fulfill his duty, but he was also a man of honor, and when they found Yrel, he couldn't just let them beat the old orc to a pulp. They whipped Yrel, they spat on him, they humiliated him, and on his honor, Tirion had promised to protect him, so he told them to let Yrel go. All that he accomplished was that Tirion himself was placed in chains, dragged to court for treason against mankind. Treason for trying to protect Yrel. His judge turned out to be Uther the Lightbringer himself, the leader of the Paladins, his former brother-in-arms, now forced to pass judgment on to his old friend. He asked Tirion what was going on, why he was protecting this orc, and Tirion told him that he couldn't perform his duties without forsaking his honor, without giving up that which he held most dear, which made him a paladin. To Tirion, honor meant everything. As a final offer, Uther gave Tirion a choice. Forsake the orc, pledge your allegiance to the Alliance, forget about this madness, and they would drop all charges and let Tirion go home. But Tirion couldn't. With all odds against him, he made the decision to hold on to his honor, and he refused the offer. This left Uther with no other choice but to strip Tirion of his titles, exile him from his lands, and excommunicate him, taking away the powers of the Holy Light. Never before had Tirion felt such a despair, such an emptiness inside of him. Just before Uther left the courtroom, Tirion asked about his son and his wife. Would they have to share his fate? His punishment for a crime they did not commit? And thankfully Uther told him that they didn't have to. The final act of kindness for his old, stubborn friend and respected fellow paladin. For those wondering how does this story end for Yrel and Tirion, well, Yrel gets saved by Thrall before his execution, and Tirion would live out his days as a hermit, keeping an eye on his son. But that's an entirely different story. This is Uther's story, and Uther's story would resume in Warcraft 3. During that time, around the land reports of a plague were rolling in, and King Tyrannus sent out his own son to investigate. Jaina Proudmoore joined Arthas, and they found out that Kel'Thuzad, together with Melganis, were behind the plague. Even worse, the plague was not meant to just kill the people, it was designed to turn them into the undead, into the Scourge.
Prince Arthas, during the night a vast army of undead warriors emerged and began attacking villages at random. Now it's heading this way.
Damn it. Jaina, I'll stay here to protect the village. Go as quickly as you can and tell Lord Uther what's happened.
But...
Go, Jaina. Every second counts.
The town of Hearthglen was under heavy assault, and Arthas told Jaina to go and find Uther while he held the city. Wave after wave of undead flowed into town, but Arthas managed to hold his ground long enough for Uther and his troops to come and help them.
Light, give me strength.
For Lordaeron, for the king!
Uther, your timing couldn't have been better.
Don't celebrate yet, son. This battle's far from over. I'm surprised that you kept things together as long as you did, lad. If I hadn't arrived just
Look,
then...
I did the best I could, Uther. If I'd had a legion of knights riding at my back, I would have...
Now is not the time to be choking on pride. What we faced here was only the beginning. The undead ranks are bolstered every time one of our warriors falls in battle.
Then we should strike at their leader. I'll go to Stratholme and kill Mal'Ganis myself if I have to.
Easy, lad. Brave as you are, you can't hope to defeat a man who commands the dead all by yourself.
Then feel free to tag along, Uther. I'm going, with or without you.
Uther was very proud of what Arthas had managed to do, but the compliment struck Arthas as an insult. He then rode off to Stratholme, and Uther talked with Jaina. He's feeling the weight of the crown for the first time, Uther said quietly. He's never had to before. This is all part of it, my lady. Part of learning how to rule wisely and how to rule well. I watched Tyrannus struggle with the same thing when he was a young man. Both good men, both wanting to do the right things for their people, to keep them safe and happy. But sometimes the only decision is which is the lesser evil. Sometimes there's no way of fixing everything. After gathering his troops, Uther followed Arthas to Stratholme, where the boy had to face a terrible choice.
Glad you could make it, Uther.
Watch your tone with me, boy. You may be the prince, but I'm still your superior as a paladin.
As if I could forget. Listen, Uther. There's something about the plague you should know. Oh no. We're too late. These people have all been infected. They may look fine now, but it's just a matter of time before they turn into the undead.
What?
This entire city must be purged.
How can you even consider that? There's got to be some other way.
Damn it, Uther. As your future king, I order you to purge this city.
You are not my king yet, boy. Nor would I obey that command even if you were.
Then I must consider this an act of treason.
Treason? Have you lost your mind, Arthas?
Have I? Lord Uther, by my right of succession and the sovereignty of my crown, I hereby relieve you of your command and suspend your paladins from service.
Arthas, you can't just...
It's done! Those of you who have the will to save this land, follow me. The rest of you, get out of my sight.
You've just crossed a terrible threshold, Arthas.
Jaina?
I'm sorry, Arthas. I can't watch you do this.
Jaina could not stand by and watch Arthas do this, and Uther was sent away by the prince himself. You can debate whether or not Arthas' choice was wrong, but for Uther it was. Arthas then purged the city, and at the end Mal'Ganis taunted him to come to Northrend. Come to Northrend, where his true destiny would unfold.
I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth if I have to. Do you hear me? To the ends of the earth!
3 days later, Jaina made her way to the city after Arthas had asked her to join him to Northrend. She refused to join him and did her very best to convince him not to go. If Mal'Ganis was able to escape him in Stratholme, what chance would Arthas have against him in Northrend? Uther rode up to her as she witnessed with her own eyes what her prince had done.
Jaina! Jaina Proudmoore!
Lord Uther?
Ah, Jaina. I thought I might find you here. Where has he gone, girl? Where has Arthas taken the fleet?
He came to me before he left. I pleaded with him not to go. I told him it sounded like a trap.
Where?
Northrend. He's gone to Northrend to hunt Mal'Ganis.
Damn that boy. I've got to inform King Tyrannus. Don't be too hard on yourself, girl. You had nothing to do with this slaughter.
You don't see it in the cinematic, but Uther told Jaina that he himself wondered if he could have done something, could have said something to prevent this purge. Arthas had made his choice, a choice which would have dire consequences. After finding out that Arthas was going to Northrend, Uther made his way to the king and he informed him about what Arthas had done. The troops were recalled by Uther's orders, but before they could make their way home, Arthas burned down their ships.
Damn Uther for forcing me to do this.
Now they were stuck in Northrend, and there Arthas found a weapon Frostmourne which stole a piece of his soul and gave him the power to defeat Mal'Ganis. After that, Arthas would roam the land of Northrend, listening to the whispers of Ner'zhul until the day came that the prince returned home.
Ah, my son.
You no longer need to sacrifice for your people. You no longer need to bear the weight of your crown. I've taken care of everything.
What is this? What are you doing, my son?
Succeeding you, father.
Arthas was no longer a paladin, he no longer wielded the lights, instead he had become one of the first new Death Knights. He murdered his own father, destroyed his own kingdom, and as a cruel twist of fate, he now worked together with Kel'Thuzad. Kel'Thuzad was killed by Arthas himself, but in Ner'zhul's grand design, they would now have to resurrect him. In order to transport his remains safely, they would have to collect a magical urn.
Vile betrayer! You are not fit enough to even carry your father's name! Why Uther ever vouched for you is beyond me. You've stripped him of his honor by casting yours to the winds. You deserve a gruesome death, boy.
Light have mercy on you. Your betrayal has broken Uther's heart, boy. He would have given his life for yours in a second. And this is how you repay his loyalty?
Your father ruled this land for 70 years, and you've ground it to dust in a matter of days.
Very dramatic, Uther. Give me the urn, and I'll make sure you die quickly.
The urn holds your father's ashes, Arthas. What? Were you hoping to piss on them one last time before you left his kingdom to rot?
I didn't know what it held. Nor does it matter. I'll take what I came for one way or another.
I dearly hope that there's a special place in hell waiting for you, Arthas.
We may never know, Uther. I intend to live forever.
Uther was a vessel for the Holy Light, and although he wasn't able to fight Arthas before, he couldn't make himself do it, he was willing to do it now. It was the final promise he had made to his king, that the ashes would be treated with respect. In that final battle against Arthas, the Holy Light and Uther himself nearly won that battle. It was only because the blade Frostmourne somehow made its way into Arthas' hands, and Arthas managed to defeat his former mentor, his former leader, and his former friend. Not even death could stop this righteous paladin, for in classic WoW, Uther's tomb offered a quest for both the Horde and the Alliance. The Alliance honored Uther and received his blessing, but the Horde were sent by Malar Dawnblade to defile his tomb. Malar was a former student of Uther, and he held Uther responsible for Arthas' betrayal and the fall of Quel'Thalas. When the Horde players did the questline, the spirit of Uther would show up and forgive them for their actions. In Wrath of the Lich King, we find out that Uther's soul isn't at his tomb, it's actually imprisoned within Frostmourne.
Frostmourne, the blade that destroyed our kingdom. Stand back! Touch that blade and your soul will be scarred for all eternity. I must attempt to commune with the spirits locked away within Frostmourne. Give me space. Back up, please!
Jaina, could it truly be you?
Uther! Dear Uther! I'm so sorry.
Jaina, you haven't much time. The Lich King sees what the sword sees. He will be here shortly.
Arthas Arthas is here? Maybe I...
Arthas is not here. Arthas is merely a presence within the Lich King's mind. A dwindling presence.
But Uther, if there's any hope of reaching Arthas, I must try.
Jaina, listen to me. You must destroy the Lich King. You cannot reason with him. He will kill you and your allies and raise you all as powerful soldiers of the Scourge.
Tell me how, Uther. How do I destroy my prince?
Snap out of it, girl. You must destroy the Lich King at the place where he merged with Ner'zhul. Atop the spire, at the frozen throne. It is the only way.
You're right, Uther. Forgive me. I don't know what got a hold of me. We will deliver this information to the king and the knights that battle the Scourge within Icecrown Citadel.
There is something else that you should know about the Lich King. Control over the Scourge must never be lost. Even if you were to strike down the Lich King, another would have to take his place. For without the control of its master, the Scourge would run rampant across the world, destroying all living things. A grand sacrifice by a noble soul.
Who could bear such a burden?
I do not know, Jaina. I suspect that the piece of Arthas that might be left inside the Lich King is all that holds the Scourge from annihilating Azeroth.
Then maybe there is still hope.
No, Jaina! He is coming. You must.
He shows up for a second time during the Quel'Dalar questline, where he tells players that the blade is made from Serenite, the blood of an old god, and is absorbing the evil from Icecrown itself.
There is only one way to cleanse this sword. Make haste for the Sunwell, and immerse the blade in its waters. I can resist Frostmourn's call no more.
The final time that we see Uther's spirits is when you turn in the Badge of the Silver Hand. This item can only be collected when you kill the Lich King with someone wielding Shadowmourne in the raid. The Badge of the Silver Hand was given to Arthas by Uther himself, and you can give it back to his spirits in exchange for the Tabard of the Lightbringer.
Arthas. Alas, hero of Azeroth, you give me a greater gift than you know. Long have I struggled to forgive the prince for his terrible transgressions. My soul has been racked with unbearable anxiety, dark thoughts, distancing me from the light. I recall clearly the gleam of pride in his eye as he stood before me, eager to defeat the enemies of the light. Eager to defend his people, no matter the cost. It is this memory of Arthas that I choose to keep in my heart. I shall always be in your debt, friend. Thank you.
And so ends the story of one of the greatest paladins ever known to this world. Throughout his life, Uther was righteous and devoted to the light. He protected his people against the Horde, and he tried to defend the land against the Scourge. In the end, it was his own beloved prince that killed him, and this act turned his soul to darker thoughts. Giving him the Badge of the Silver Hand reminds him of the good within Arthas, and now the soul of this righteous paladin can rest in peace. Hello everyone! Blizzard has decided to make Lady Liadrin a playable character in Hearthstone if you reach level 20 on a new character while questing in World of Warcraft. In honor of this, I thought it'd be a good idea to sit down and talk about her storyline. Now, I've talked a fair bit about her before. I believe it was during the story of the Naru and the story of Kill for Sunstrider, but since then, she has received some more origin story and she has played a part during Warlords of Draenor. That means that there's plenty to talk about, so let's begin, shall we? Liadrin was part of the High Elves living within Quel'Thalas. Now unfortunately, the location of their city, it was upon sacred troll grounds, which turned the local Amani trolls into their mortal enemies. For many years, the High Elves would fight against the trolls, backed up by the powers of the Sunwell, a magical fountain of power, enabling them to hold their city, but the troll numbers were great. The High Elves realized that they needed help against the trolls, so they asked the human tribe led by Paladin to offer their aid. Together, the humans and High Elves were able to put an end to the so-called Troll Wars, shattering the Amani Empire and securing the land for the High Elves. However, this defeat did not mean the complete end for the Amani Trolls, and many years later, Zul'jin started to unite the tribes under his leadership. This is where Liadrin's story begins, as she's captured by the Amani while investigating one of the runestones who've been malfunctioning. These runestones protected the High Elves, disabling others from casting magic, while still granting them full access to their own powers. With her was the spellcaster Darkandravir and her apprentice Galel. Galel was wondering why the trolls simply hadn't killed him yet, and Liadrin understood that he was still young. He hadn't seen that much of the world. She knew that trolls were keen on practicing dark rituals, were probably preparing one of them, and as they were held captive, another was brought in. Lorfmar Ferran, lieutenant of the Farsiders at the time, he'd been with his party and they were overtaken by the trolls. When he woke up, his comrades were dead, he was taken captive, and as they discussed the situation, the trolls prepared a brazier with green leaves, igniting a fire, slowly creeping towards it, and the High Elves captive, they knew what was coming. They informed Lorfmar that this was meant to pacify them, and before the smoke filled the chamber, Lorfmar promised them that if the opportunity would arrive, if he could make a move, he would get them out of there. All or none, and they all agreed before the black smoke filled the room, entered their lungs, and took their minds. Visions assaulted Liadrin. Two of the wooden masks shot out and floated into the air, calling her guilty, guilty, guilty. Guilty for making the trolls hide like animals. Guilty for killing their brothers and sisters. Guilty for thinking that they own everything. And guilty for being foolish enough to think that they were going to succeed where others had failed. As Liadrin looked at her companions, horrible images assaulted her senses. She saw Lorfmar bathed in flames, Darkan as an animated corpse, and a large chunk of Galel's skull fell down on the floor, blood pouring out as he said, "Sometimes it sounds like children screaming, hundreds of them." So far, this voodoo magic had prevented them from focusing enough to cast spells, or as Liadrin was a priestess, connect to the light, when an opportunity to escape presented itself as Zul'jin himself entered their prison and started interrogating Lorfmar. He wanted to know how to overpower their runestones. He wanted to know everything about their Sunwell and its defenses. None of them were willing to talk, of course, which Zul'jin had expected, so he started to skin Lorfmar, cut him open just below the navel, and thrust his spindly fingers into the open wound. Lorfmar screamed, but Galel had been able to loosen his bindings around his wrists. He freed himself as the trolls were eagerly watching their leaders work, picked up a spear off the wall, and he started the fight. Lorfmar took full advantage of the opportunity. He used a miniature blade that he carried under his belt to cut himself free, while Liadrin finally gained enough of her senses back to reconnect to the light. She focused on all the pain and horror she had felt in the past several minutes, and she redirected them into the mind of Zul'jin. The troll clutched his skull as he suffered a wave of pain, paranoia, and terror. Darkan had been able to focus in this time, collect his powers, and he used his magic to teleport them all away. This event took place before the first horde invaded Azeroth, but as they did, the orcs, they allied themselves with Zul'jin and his trolls, with the promise of finally wiping out the High Elves, as well as conquer the world. Unfortunately for the trolls, things didn't go according to plan. Even though the orcs had been able to enslave the Red Dragonflight, not even their amazing power would be enough. Quel'Thalas, its magical defenses, empowered by the Sunwell, were unpenetrable, and their capital city remained safe. The Horde instead focused their efforts on Lordaeron and its capital city, while Zul'jin, with a bunch of his fellow trolls, they were left behind to keep on fighting. Despite all odds, Zul'jin was captured by Halduran Brightwing and his elves, but Halduran, he didn't know what to do with him, and they couldn't reach anyone in a higher position to make the call. To kill some time, the High Elves unleashed their fury and wrath upon Zul'jin, making him pay for all the suffering, all the lives he had taken over the years. They even took one of his eyes until Liadrin could take it no longer, and she urged Halduran to just kill the troll and be done with it. This torture left a bitter taste in her mouth. Alderaan explained that it was not his decision to make, but before they could do anything else, a band of trolls attacked their camp, giving Zul'jin the opportunity to cut off his own arm and make his escape. The Horde would eventually be defeated by the alliance of Liadrin and Liadrin, and those who had been captured with her all those years ago. They'd moved up in the world. She herself had become a high priestess, Galel had become a full and proper priest, and Lor'themar had been appointed as Ranger Lord. Only Darkhan had been unable to obtain a higher rank of Grand Magister, and probably because of his selfishness and abrasive personality, and this aid at the spellcaster made him do the unthinkable. Reports of the plague spreading across Lordaeron had reached even the High Elves, the purge of Strathholm, the rumors of the prince returning home and killing his own father. The elves had stayed away from this conflict. They thought that it was best to leave the humans to deal with it on their own, as they had their Sunwell and their magic to protect them, but this would turn out to be a great mistake. Darkhan sold his people to Arthas as he informed him about the defenses of Quel'Thalas, the 3 magical moon crystals required to lower the magical defenses, and not even Sylvanas Windrunner was able to stop the army of the undead. She was turned into a banshee, forced to watch as her kingdom fell, forced to fight against her own people, and Liadrin was shaken to the core as she witnessed the banshee and the army marching upon their city. As they felt the gate fall, the order none of them had ever expected to hear was given. They had to fall back, retreat to the Sunwell, and keep their fountain of power safe. They didn't know that they had been betrayed from within, of course, that Darkhan had already slain their magisters and used spells of binding to keep them away from the Sunwell. They didn't know, and nothing would stand in the way of death. Galel, he was ordered to fall back and help evacuate the children. They set sail, and from their ships they watched the city burn, but even these innocents were not spared. A great wave of stone-skinned gargoyles assaulted their ship, sent them to the bottom of the sea. Galel was picked up by one of these flying undead as he could hear the terrified, agonizing screams of the children. They were sinking, slowly drowning, unable to escape from below the deck of the ship. Galel grabbed his dagger and stabbed the gargoyle where he believed his heart would be, and both of them crashed out of the sky towards the water below. The last thing that Galel heard before merciful darkness overtook him were the screams of the children. Meanwhile, Liadrin tried to steel herself and remain calm to keep her connection to the light strong. There was a great sea separating the Scourge army from Quel'Thalas, but nothing would stand in Arthas' way. He picked up the Runeblade Frostmourne, tossed it near the edge of the water, and the icy magic from the Runeblade did the rest. For miles, water turned to ice, allowing the undead forces to advance. Not even the arrival of King Anastarian Sunstrider and his legendary blade Felamalorn could hold against the prince, and Liadrin was forced to watch it all. She tried to use the light to heal and empower her people. She did her very best, but the light simply wasn't enough. Her breaking point came when her mentor, High Priest Vendelor, was murdered by one of the Scourge abominations. This man had been more than just a mentor and a teacher. He had acted as her father after her parents had been killed by trolls, and now this beloved figure had his spine severed. With an anguished cry, Liadrin dropped to her knees and more desperately than ever before sought the powers of the light. But in her frenzied state, the light's radiant bliss was beyond her. Vendelor's longtime friend Belovir, he avenged his death by casting a spell, destroying the abomination from within, and as an act, a final act towards his old friend, he used his powers to teleport Liadrin away. Liadrin's form dissipated, sparing her the sight of the undead closing in, surrounding the Grand Magister, and unceremoniously tearing him apart.
Citizens of Silvermoon, I have given you ample opportunities to surrender, but you have stubbornly refused. Know that today, your entire race and your ancient heritage will end. Death itself has come to claim the high home of the elves. Now arise, Kel'Thuzad, and serve the Lich King once again.
I am reborn as promised. The Lich King has granted me eternal life.
There was nothing the High Elves could do, and Arthas used the powers of the Sunwell to resurrect Kel'Thuzad into a Lich. Darkhan, against his new master's will, had already sampled from the powers of the Sunwell, and its corruption now greatly affected him. It didn't matter to Arthas. He knew of Darkon's ambitions and lust for power, and he granted the mage exactly what he wanted, as Frostmourne plunged deep and Darkon returned as an undead to serve his master's will. After this, Arthas and his forces moved on, leaving the High Elves to pick up the pieces. Their prince Kil'jaeden returned home, and he examined the damage done to his kingdom. He said farewell to his father, and he examined the Sunwell, and they came to the conclusion that its powers were now contaminated by Arthas' actions. They had to destroy the Sunwell, for the corruption would spread into their people. And on top of that, Liadrin had also returned home, but with her came the news that the trolls were gathering their forces, and they were making ready for an attack. Zul'jin had always been interested in the powers of the Sunwell, and after witnessing the Scourge doing what they had been unable to do for years, now was the time for the trolls to make their move. Kil'jaeden figured that if that was the case, then they would give the trolls exactly what they wanted. Blow up the Sunwell, and with it, the remaining undead left behind on the island, as well as the invading trolls. Kil'jaeden, together with Romaf and Astalor, they would have to focus on their spell work, while volunteers would hold the attacking forces at bay. Many volunteered to join the fight, amongst them Lor'themar and his Farstriders, but even Galel offered his healing skills. He had been found, washed ashore, and he spent weeks simply staring at the wall, unable to speak, unable to do anything. The things that he had seen, the screams of the children, had done some immense damage to him, but for this, he would do his best to reconnect to the light and fight with them. Liadrin also joined the party, but not in a role as High Priest. Liadrin's voice turned acrid. What good is a force that fails to perform when it's most needed? The light is a fickly and worthless thing, and I will have none of it. As of the day my mentor died, I was a high priestess no longer. She picked up a truncheon from the wall, saying that surely one of the men would be able to show her how to use this. Liadrin would help in the fight, but not as a priest. With their forces gathered, the High Elves made ready to do what had to be done to blow up their ancient fountain of power. Kil'jaeden, Romaf and Astalor, they worked on their spell as the troops kept them safe. Liadrin crushed the skull of a thing that had once been an elven guardian, squinted to see through the rain, and realized with a gut-wrenching despair that the enemy approaching her was familiar. It was an old man wearing the robes of a high priest. She lowered her truncheon as she looked into the spiritless eyes of Vandalor. I cannot do this. I cannot do this. You must. Do not look into his eyes. The walking corpse that had once been Liadrin's mentor and substitute father raked out with long nails, clumsily slashing at her face. His robes were stained a dark crimson, and the center of his chest was nothing more than a ragged, maggot-infested concavity. The former high priest cursed the light, cursed it with a passion that defied all she had once held to be righteous and true, and buried her truncheon in the side of Vandalor's head. She heard his neck pop. The corpse stumbled, then lurched forward. Liadrin adjusted her grip and rotated her entire body into the backswing, then swung a third and final time, successfully wrenching the old elf's head from his shoulders. As the thing that had once been Vandalor fell, Liadrin raised her head to the sky and screamed into the downpour. Meanwhile, Kil'jaeden finished the spell and they teleported the people out of there, and the powers of the Sunwell were turned against the trolls and the undead. A blinding white beam exploded outward, vaporizing everything and everyone in its path. Afterwards, the High Elves wanted to crown Kil'jaeden their new king, but he refused, stating that his father would be remembered as the last king of the High Elves. A new chapter for their people would begin, and in honor of those whose blood had been shed throughout the kingdom, in honor of their sacrifice, they would now call themselves Cinderai, the Blood Elves. Hail to the Cinderai! His people cheered.
The Cinderai will prevail!
5 years passed, and during that time, the Blood Elves found out just exactly what price they paid when they blew up the Sunwell. Over the years, they had become so dependent on it, addicted to its power, that no longer having this steady source of magic caused them agonizing pain, and they were suffering from withdrawal. Kil'jaeden had allied himself with Illidan's Stormrage, and Illidan showed the Blood Elves how to drain magic from objects or even living beings. This allowed them to survive, to keep going on day at a time, but the hunger would always return. Liadrin had spent her time hunting the undead from their lands, and she found crystals waiting for her outside the door, ready to be drained and sate her hunger for a bit, given by an unknown benefactor. Lor'themar had risen to the rank of Regent Lord, and in the meantime had his own adventures with Anvina and the betrayer Darkon Drafir. At the end of that story, they believed that Darkon was defeated, vanquished from the world, but as it goes with the undead, they don't stay that often, and Liadrin knew that Darkon was out there. She wanted to make him pay for his betrayal, and she would soon be given the power to make that happen, since Kil'jaeden and his forces had found an incredibly powerful being of light, a Naru called Mu'uru. They had worked on a way of forcing this being to give up his holy power, drain the light from it, and Liadrin was invited to become the first to wield it. Romav remembered how she had stepped away from original faith, claiming that she was not willing to work with such a fickle source of power, but now they could command it and force it to obey. Combine her skills with a weapon and the holy power of the Naru to make Blood Elf Paladins, an organization known as the Blood Knights. Liadrin observed the Naru chained within their city, and she embraced this gift. Romav said, "I hereby name you foremost amongst our new order, Matriarch of the Blood Knights, Warrior Priestess of the Sindorai. Stand to be recognized, Lady Liadrin." Now draining the light from Mu'uru did not come without complications. Liadrin and those that followed in her path, they suffered incredible headaches. They heard the Naru scream in their minds, but they went through it nonetheless, and they forced the light to obey. Most of their people, they spoke of them with a kind of revulsion, for it was said that they stole the powers of the light from some otherworldly creature that they kept in thrall. But Liadrin's old companion Galel, he did not feel the same way. Over the years, he had become a massive arcane junkie. He owed money to all the wrong people, and he missed the touch of the light. He figured that he had to go cold turkey, become clean again, and plead his case to Liadrin to join her, to embrace the light once more. When he approached her and asked her to join the organization, Liadrin had reservations about him. She was not sure if he was the right person for the organization, but at the same time she also remembered who he was in that troll lair so many years ago, and she even believed that it was Galel who had gifted her the arcane stones. It was not Galel who had done this though, it was actually Lor'themar who had given these presents. He had always felt admiration and affection for Liadrin. She didn't notice, of course, and while thinking to the whole all or none pact that they made, she allowed Galel to join them, and this would turn out to be a very big mistake. Where the Naru inflicted great pain upon the other Blood Knights, Galel felt its effect so much more. Sometimes the Naru would sound like shattering glass, sometimes it sounded like twisting metal, and sometimes it sounded like children screaming, hundreds of them. At the end of the story, Liadrin is ordered to go after Galel because he had murdered and sprung up the corpse of his dealer in the city, the one who had provided him with the crystals. Liadrin actually wanted to go after Darkon Drafir, who they had a big lead on, but considering that the Blood Elves at the time were in negotiations to join the Horde, this matter could not wait, and the Blood Knight Matriarch had a good idea as to where to find Galel. Back in the troll lair, where the story began, she found Galel stuffing arcane crystals down his veins, laughing like a madman and striking out at her. For a brief moment, the old Galel was able to come throughout the haze and explain to her what he felt when he forced the light to bend. The screams of the children he had witnessed, he believed that they should have died when the trolls had captured them. The brief moment passed, and Galel struck out like a feral animal. Liadrin had no other choice but to defend herself, striking out at him, and with her blade, she cut off the top of his head, and his lifeblood spilled to the ground. Liadrin sat, unmindful of her bleeding wounds for the moment. She pulled Galel to her, stroking his armor, allowing tears to flow. All or none, Galel. All or none. She stayed that way, until her eyes held no more tears, and Galel's body grew cold. "I did what was necessary," she repeated inwardly over and over. "I defended myself." Yet the memory of this day would linger, persistent and immune to purging, a permanent scar upon her soul. Two of the three visions Liadrin had witnessed in the troll lair had come true so far, and the final one would soon follow. The Blood Elves had found clues as to where to find Darkon, and it was Lor'themar who again confronted the betrayer. There had always been a sense of guilt within Lor'themar, since he had been the one who had informed Darkon about the defenses, thinking that they would work together to strengthen it. He didn't know what Darkon would do with that information, sell his people out to this Master Arthas, and now Darkon was ordered to take care of this new holy threat, convert the Blood Knights into the Scourge army. Luckily, this would never come to pass. In their confrontation, Darkon used his magic to set Lorfmar on fire, but as one, the Blood Knight used the holy light to heal the Regent Lords. With a magical crystal attached to his arrow, Lorfmar shot Darkon in the head and the corpse dissipated. Now it's unknown if Darkon will truly stay dead. He has come back several times before, but at least for that moment, he would pose no threats, and Liadrin's visions had all come true. However, the future of the Blood Elves and the Blood Knights would soon take a turn none of them could have ever predicted. Prince Kil'jaeden Sunstrider had decided to ally himself with Kil'jaeden and the Burning Legion. When they decided to destroy the Sunwell, not all of its power was gone, and the Red Dragon Coriastras, he decided to hide away this power from the world in the form of a human girl named Envina Teague. This was the story I was talking about earlier, in which Lorfmar witnessed Envina taking on Darkon Dravir, and they believed him to be dead, but that turned out to be false. At the end of that tale, the Blood Elves promised to keep Envina's secret safe, but they didn't expect the prince to turn on them, and Kil'jaeden captured Envina. They planned to use her powers to empower a portal and bring Kil'jaeden into the world of Azeroth. On top of that, Kil'jaeden also decided to attack his own people and steal back the Naru Mu'uru. Lady Liadrin, she saw this attack with her own eyes, and she decided to travel to Outland to Shevrev City and talk with the Naru Adal. In this conversation, Adal explained to Liadrin that events took place just as they were supposed to happen, and that Mu'uru knew what was going to happen and had already accepted his fate. There was a prophecy spoken by Prophet Velen, and it had now come true. Silvery moon, washed in blood, led astray into the night, armed with sword of broken light. Broken, then betrayed by one, standing there bestride the sun. At darkest hour, redemption comes, a knightly lady, sworn to blood. Liadrin realized that Kil'jaeden was a false prince, and she renounced her loyalties to House Sunstrider and decided to join Adal and the Shattered Sun Offensive in their battle against Kil'jaeden and Kil'jaeden. Together, we assaulted the Isle of Quel'Danas. We unlocked it piece by piece, and within the Master's Terrace, we found Kil'jaeden and we took care of him. Plans were already in motion though, and Kil'jaeden believed that we would not be able to stop Kil'jaeden and the Legion, but of course, he was wrong. We entered the Sunwell Plateau, we took on everything in our path, and we even took down the Naru Mu'uru, who had been so drained of his light that he had transformed into the void god called Entropius. The Blood Elves had taken the light out of this holy being. He was consumed by darkness, yet not all hope was lost. Once we defeated Kil'jaeden himself, prevented him from entering the world, Velen shows up, holding the core of Mu'uru.
Mortal heroes, your victory here today was foretold long ago. My brother's anguished cry of defeat will echo across the universe, bringing renewed hope to all those who still stand against the burning crusade. As the Legion's final defeat draws ever nearer, stand proud in the knowledge that you have saved worlds without number from the flame. Just as this day marks an ending, so too does it herald a new beginning. The creature Entropius, whom you were forced to destroy, was once the noble Naru, Mu'uru. In life, Mu'uru channeled vast energies of light and hope. For a time, a misguided few sought to steal those energies.
Our arrogance was unpardonable. We damned one of the most noble beings of all. We may never atone for this sin.
Then fortunate it is that I have reclaimed the noble Naru's spark from where it fell. Where faith dwells, hope is never lost, young blood elf.
Can it be?
Gaze now, mortals, upon the heart of Mu'uru. Unblemished, bathed by the light of creation, just as it was at the dawn. In time,
The light and hope held within will rebirth more than this mere fount of power. Mayhap they will rebirth the soul of a nation.
Blessed ancestors, I feel it. So much love. So much grace. There are no words. Impossible to describe.
Salvation, young one. It waits for us all.
The Sunwell itself has been reignited, offering the Blood Elves a new source of power and perhaps even a future. Liadrin claims that they may never atone for their sins, and unfortunately, she and the Blood Knights, they didn't see a lot of time in the story after these events. There was a minor conversation with the whole Quel'Dalar questline during Wrath of the Lich King, in which Liadrin says, "My brothers and sisters, words cannot describe what I felt upon seeing the Sunwell rekindled. In that moment, the light revealed to me the truth of the terrible things I had done. Our people had walked a dark path, and mine was amongst the darkest of them all. But the light showed me that I was not lost. It helped me to find the strength to survive, in spite of all that had happened and all the evil I had wrought. It is a strength that we Sin'dorei all share. It is a strength that we will need to free ourselves of the addiction ravaging our people. It will be the most difficult battle we have ever faced, but our resolve and the power of the Sunwell, it will sustain us until we've been restored to our greatness." Interestingly enough, even though the players were able to restore and obtain Quel'Dalar during Warlords of Draenor, Liadrin, she joins us in this alternate reality, taking the battle to the Iron Horde, and apparently she is the true owner of the legendary Quel'Dalar. On alternate Draenor, Liadrin and her Blood Knights, they fought against the Iron Horde. They assisted in the defense of Auchindoun in Talador, and they even went to a whole different planet to try and stop Gul'dan and Terongor.
I lend you my strength, Master. Lord Mongrathod, hear my call. This mortal threatens the Master's plans. Come, Terongor. Our contact has provided another entrance to Auchindoun. Your feast of souls awaits. Your suffering will be legendary.
You won't stand alone. The light gives us strength.
Mongrathod is left behind to keep us busy, while Gul'dan and Terongor, they make their way back to Auchindoun. A fierce battle erupts, with Maladar and Liadrin working together against the demonic forces.
Vermin! I will turn your world to ash!
I have it!
You
Finish
will never
it!
defeat the light, demon! Let's go. They went through that portal.
Even though we were able to defeat Mongrathod, the Draenei would eventually be betrayed from within, and Terongor was given access to Auchindoun and the souls resting inside. These souls gave him incredible power, to which we tried to stop him, but before we could end him, before we could land the final blow, Terongor jumped off the platform, claiming that he needed more. More souls to devour, more power to gain, until he eventually turned into the beast known as Gorfiend. In the meantime, Gul'dan and his Shadow Council, they've been very hard at work, and while we dismantled the Iron Horde, Gul'dan saw the opportunity to take control. He gave the remaining orcs a second chance to join him, offered them the demon blood once again, and this time the orcs willingly joined his demonic forces. Liadrin and her Blood Knights, they began searching for a way to cure Gul'dan's fell orcs, while also discovering what exactly had happened to Terongor. We went under Auchindoun, we witnessed the glorious being known as Gorfiend, just before he's teleported out and taken to the Hellfire Citadel. This is where we made our stand against Gul'dan's horde, against Gorfiend and anything that they pitched against us. Even the mighty Archimond was not able to hold against our might, but unfortunately Liadrin did not play a part in these events. This means that we've come to the end of our story, at least for the moment. Only time will tell what Liadrin and the Blood Knights might face in the future. Perhaps they'll dive further into the relationship between her and Lor'themar, and perhaps with time they'll actually find a way to atone for their sins and heal the scars on her spirit. Liadrin's life has not been easy. The Blood Elves have made some very difficult choices, but throughout it all they persevered. They did anything they had to do to make sure that their people, their legacy would live on. Hello everyone! For this week, we're going to do a story that's been requested a lot, almost as much as the Lich King story. It's the story of the Ashbringer. This was the weapon that was a scourge to the scourge. It converted into darkness, only to be reignited by the light and strike down Frostmourne itself. It has a beautiful story and we're going to do it probably in 2 parts, but I get ahead of myself. First, let's talk about its origin and its creation. So sit back, relax, and I hope you'll enjoy. The origin of the Ashbringer goes back to the time of the first Orcish Horde invasion. The Alliance of Lordaeron has been able to push back Doomhammer and his forces all the way back to the Blackrock Mountain, and there the Horde is ready to make its final stand. The Alliance of Lordaeron is ready to meet them head on, and they're not alone in this fight. The Paladins of the Order of the Silver Hand are with them, and amongst them is a Paladin called Alexandros Mograine. Mograine in the distance, he spots an Orcish Warlock dealing massive damage to the troops, and he orders soldiers to shoot the Warlock down. As they do, the Warlock drops a mysterious artifact full of darkness, the artifact he used to empower his spells. Mograine reached down to pick it up, and as he did, the darkness from the artifact it took away the flesh around his hand, and his light was unable to heal the wounds. Despite its obvious sinister nature, Mograine decides to keep the artifacts, and the war against the Horde would be won by the Alliance. A few years later, Mograine received a visit at his home from High Inquisitor Fairbanks. With him live his 2 sons, Renaud and Darian Mograine, with Darian being the youngest of the 2. Darian, when he was born, he nearly didn't make it, but his father, he took him outside of their house and he placed him in cold water. To his joy and relief, his newborn son started to cry, but when he went back inside the house to show him to his mother, he found out that his wife had not survived giving birth to their son. From that moment on, Darian would always be his father's favorite, since he had his mother's eyes, and losing Darian would mean losing his beloved wife all over again, so Darian was a favorite of his father. Renaud was often told to keep an eye on his youngest brother, but the boys didn't always listen. Once they nearly touched the foul artifact Alexandros had brought with him from the war, but thankfully nothing bad happened, because their father caught them in the act. Now here we had Fairbanks at their home, informing Mograine that a plague was spreading across the land. Arthas, Jaina and Uther, they were already sent out by the king to investigate the plague, but so far they had no success. Mograine had already been wanting to discuss something with some of the other members of the Silver Hand, so they met up in South Shore to discuss this mysterious artifact. You see, Mograine, he always believed that without light there can't be darkness. Light and shadow, they're 2 parts of the same coin, and he believed that they could forge this artifact into a weapon of righteousness. His fellow men did not believe his conviction. They tried to destroy the orb with the holy lights, but instead of destroying it, the artifact actually absorbed the lights. More and more light they cast upon the orb until no trace of shadow remained, and the artifact was turned from darkness into light. Mograine then picked it up, and as a miracle, not only his scorn hand was healed, but his entire soul was cleansed. Mograine had been right about the artifact, and the situation with the plague had become worse. Lord Commander Davrohan, he showed up to inform them that Prince Arthas had made the terrible decision to purge Stratholme. He removed the Paladins of the Silver Hand from service, and he had set sail to the lands of Northrend.
Lord Uther, by my right of succession and the sovereignty of my crown, I hereby relieve you of your command and suspend your Paladins from service.
Arthas, you can't just...
It's done! Those of you who have the will to save this land, follow me. The rest of you, get out of my sight.
Officially, they were not allowed to do anything anymore at this point, but still, Davrohan, he told Mograine to take the artifact and go to Ironforge. There, the finest crafters in the world, the dwarves, would be able to take the artifact, forge it into a weapon, and they could use it against the Scourge. Alexandros and Fairbanks, they met up with King Magni Bronzebeard once they arrived at Ironforge, and Magni was in a foul mood. He had been informed that his brother Muradin Bronzebeard, he'd been killed by the treacherous prince. He was grieving and hurting, but he accepted the job of crafting the weapon. There are those that believe that master dwarven blacksmiths, they possess the ability to impart emotions into the blades they shape. As Magni stood before the orb, thinking of the brother he would never see again, he harnessed all of his rage, his fury, his desire for vengeance. He called upon it, he willed it into being, and with a massive war cry that echoed in the vastness of the Great Forge, he brought the hammer down. Again and again and again, until finally he had crafted the finest weapon ever created by his hands. He passed on the weapon to Mograine, hoping that it was not too late, because in the meantime Arthas, he had made his way home and he had murdered his own father. With great haste, Mograine and Fairbanks, they rode back home, since Mograine feared that something might have happened to his sons, but thankfully they were smart enough to move to Hearthglen. As Mograine, relieved of course, he stepped out of his home and a small band of Scourge emerged from the woods. In an instant they met with this new mighty blade, infused by Magni's emotions and the light itself, and in an instant the battle was over. The blade felt as much part of Mograine as the blood that ran through his veins, a beautiful lethal creation that left nothing but charred bone in its wake. From that moment on, the weapon would be known as the Ashbringer, and together with his wielder, it did just that. It turned thousands upon thousands of Scourge into nothing but ash. That's how the Ashbringer came to be, and for a time Alexandros and the Blade, they were the Scourge against the Scourge. The Burning Legion would eventually be defeated at Mount Hyjal, but the threat of the undead, it was not so easily vanquished, and even the mightiest heroes can fall. One day, Alexandros, Davrohan and several others, they made their way to Stratholme to cleanse it of the undead, but the undead, they were waiting for them. In the struggle, Davrohan, he was separated from his comrades, and he fell right into the hands of the Dreadlords named Belnazar. Belnazar did not just kill Davrohan, oh no, he infiltrated his body and soul, and he masked himself to infiltrate the Order and manipulate it from within. He set to work upon corrupting Renaud Mograine, the eldest son. He turned him against his father and his brother. There was always a rift, since his father had favored Darien for so many years, and Belnazar, he preyed upon the darkness within Renaud's soul. He convinced him to betray his father in exchange for great power and prestige. Renaud was told to convince his father that Darien had been kidnapped by the undead and taken to Stratholme. With all haste, Alexandros and Fairbanks, they rode to Stratholme together right into a trap. Countless of undeads, they were waiting for them there, and while Fairbanks, he simply fell under their numbers, Mograine kept slicing them down until countless numbers turned into only a few, and even those few fell before the Ashbringer. The battle had been endless though. Mograine, he was tired and he had dropped his weapon. This was the opportunity his son had been waiting for. As Renaud appeared, he picked up his father's blade and he stabbed his own father in the back. Alexandros was betrayed by his own son, and even worse, this plan, it was created by Belnazar and Kel'Thuzad, since Kel'Thuzad, he knew that Alexandros was a great enemy to the Scourge, but he could become an even greater ally. He took the body back to Naxxramas. He started to torture him until nothing remained of the once righteous Paladin. All that remained now was the Death Knight Mograine, one of the 4 horsemen, and he wielded the corrupted Ashbringer. In the meantime, the Order, it was not doing so well. They had found out about Alexandros' death. Fairbanks had actually survived the trap at Stratholme, but as he tried to expose Renaud as the betrayer that he was placed in chains. Belnazar, disguised as that leader, it was still covering for Renaud. He was corrupting them from within, and while some wanted to recruit help from different races against the Scourge, others believed that their organization should remain pure. In light of this, the Order, it split up, whereas the Scarlet Crusade, it received Renaud Mograine as their first commander, while others formed the organization known as the Argent Dawn, which Darien Mograine joined. Darien, up to this point, only knew that his father had died, and he didn't believe Fairbanks' words about his brother were true. One day, he met with a troll called Zabra Hex, and this troll had earlier taken up residence within the Scarlet Monastery, and from its books, he had found his faith in the light. He had actually met Alexandros Mograine before. They had made a connection with each other. Alexandros had spared the troll's life, and Zabra could still feel their connection. He knew that Darien's father was still alive. He had dreamed of a floating fortress above a burning city. It seemed like madness, but if his father was still alive, then Darien had to go and try and save him. From within the Argent Dawn, he recruited volunteers to join him into Naxxramas on what could surely be a suicide mission, but despite all odds and a few casualties along the way, Darien manages to reach the 4 horsemen and take out his own father. This act stopped his father's physical form as one of the horsemen, but his spirit, it was still bound to the corrupted blade and it would know no rest. From the weapon, his father whispered to Darien to get out of Naxxramas as fast as he could and take the sword to the Scarlet Monastery. Darien's brother Renaud still led the Scarlet Crusade and his father had a lust for vengeance. When Renaud struck out against Darien when he saw his brother, called him a traitor, was prepared to sever the final ties to his former life, from the blade rose the spirit of Alexandros Mograine. Renaud couldn't believe his eyes. He begged his father to forgive him, and with a quick slice his father ended his life and told him that he was forgiven. The youngest of the Mograine family couldn't believe what had happened to his father, but the Scourge, it was still gathering more and more forces, and they were getting ready to assault Light's Hope Chapel. In a dream, Darien talked with Fairbanks. Since Fairbanks, he already lost his life within a monastery, of course, and they were talking about finding some way to redeem his father's soul. Darien was not ready to give up on his father quite yet, and Fairbanks told him to seek out the exiled Tyrion Fordring. I'll dedicate a video to Tyrion in the future. The short version of his story is that in the past, Tyrion was a member of the Knights of the Silver Hand. He was a paladin himself, but his honor compelled him to protect an orc named Eitric. This act caused him to lose his titles, his lands, and they even tried to take away his lights, but Tyrion found out that no one can take away your conviction in the lights. He has spent years in exile, watching from a distance as his son Talon grew up, and now Darien is told to talk to this exiled paladin. At first, Tyrion, he has no desire to listen to Darien, but he changes his mind when Darien tells him that his father's soul is at stake. The entire tale about his father seems disturbing and unbelievable, but Tyrion can sense that a soul is trapped within the blades, and he tells Darien that if there's anything that might undo the corruption, then it would be an act of love greater than the act of evil that corrupted the sword. Such an act is often the ultimate test of faith, and with this knowledge in mind, Darien, he makes his way back to the Argent Dawn, but before he leaves, he asks Tyrion to come back. Tyrion was once a vessel of the light with faith, wisdom, valor, honor. Tyrion was once a paladin and an inspiration. He could be a hero once more, but the decision is for Tyrion to make. Once Darien arrives at Light's Hope, he finds out that the massive Scourge army is making its way to the chapel. Beneath the chapel, the Order has made sure that 1,000 of the bravest souls, warriors, priests, paladins, champions of battles long past, they will all move beneath the chapel to keep them away from the Scourge. To make sure that they would not be turned into the undead and not turned into their enemy. Kel'Thuzad and the Scourge, they know this. They know that's exactly why they want to take the chapel. And the Argent Dawn gets ready to lay down their lives to defend this holy place. In the distance, they see them coming. 100,000 uncountable abominations of the Scourge marching upon their little army. The light, their faith, it is with them. But against these numbers, it's simply not enough. Those that fall are turned into the undead themselves. Not even the arrival of Tyrion Fordring himself can stem the tide of battle. And Darien realizes what he must do. A strong act of love, the ultimate test of faith, a greater act of love than the evil that corrupted the blade. Darien takes the corrupted Ashbringer and he stabs himself with the weapon. His soul in exchange for that of his father, and in response the heavens themselves open up. A reckoning of 1,000 vengeful souls. The light itself, it crashes down upon the Scourge army and it decimates them within seconds. As Darien falls down on his knees, he can feel darkness close in. His actions have saved the day, but in the end, Kel'Thuzad, he has not lost everything just yet. He claims the youngest Mograine as his new Death Knight and the new wielder of the corrupted Ashbringer.
Father, I wish to join you in the war against the undead. I want to fight. I can sit idle no longer.
Darien Mograine, you are barely of age to hold a sword, let alone battle the undead hordes of Lordaeron. I could not bear losing you. Even the thought...
If I die, Father, I would rather it be on my feet, standing in defiance against the undead legions. If I die, let me die with you!
My son, there will come a day when you will command the Ashbringer, and with it, mete out justice across this land. I have no doubt that when that day finally comes, you will bring pride to our people, and that Lordaeron will be a better place because of you. But, my son, that day is not today. Do not forget.
Darien has set his father free, and in exchange he himself has become an agent of the Lich King, an agent of the Scourge. This brings us to the end of part 1 for the story of the Ashbringer, and next week we'll continue, since the blade still has a big part to play within the story. Not only was the corrupted Ashbringer in the game once upon a time with its own special event, those that have created the Death Knight in the past already know that light and darkness is not set in stone. However, I'll save that story for next week. This week we'll continue the storyline, but first I want to talk about how all of this happened within the game, because once upon a time it was actually possible to obtain the corrupted Ashbringer for ourselves. Let's begin, shall we? Way back when, during classic World of Warcraft, a rumor was quickly spreading across the land. Those that battled within Alterac Valley, they were able to pick up a book called Ned Pagel's Guide to Extreme Angling, and in the book it was missing every single page but the last one, which read the following. And that's where you'll find the legendary sword of the Scarlet High Lord, Ashbringer. Ain't it amazing what you run into an ordinary day of fishing? Naturally, this sparked a desire for fishing across the land, and many people within the game, they started to speculate and come up with crazy theories as to how you could obtain the blade with fishing. Surely this book was a hint given by Blizzard. Surely only those that would spend days upon days casting out their line, trying out their luck, surely they would be worthy of the weapon. But sadly, that was not the case. This was just Blizzard trolling the players, because the blade would eventually become obtainable when the first version of Naxxramas opened up within the game. Now in the comics, as I told you last week, it was Darien and his crew that assaulted Naxxramas, but in game we were the ones, or at least a very few of us, who were actually able to do the raid, and those that did, those that were able to take down the 4 horsemen with Alexandros Mograine as one of the bosses, they got a chance at getting the corrupted Ashbringer. The blade was epic, it was amazing, it would even whisper to you from time to time. And if you took the blade to the Scarlet Monastery, similar to how Darien did it within the comics, then you'll be able to see all the Crusaders kneel down, Mograine he popped up out of the blade, and he quickly passed judgment upon his eldest son. Even Fairbanks got his own event. Normally you could just kill him as an extra boss hidden behind a secret door, but with the Ashbringer in hand, he would tell you the tale behind Renault's betrayal and the corruption of the Ashbringer. He also states that Mograine had another son, Darien of course, who resides within Outlands, and he has the ability to forge a new Ashbringer. With the release of the Burning Crusade, the Dark Portal opened up, and we were able to go into Outlands ourselves. We were searching for the other son, but it seems like Blizzard had a change of heart when it comes to this storyline. Many speculated that David Wayne, which you can find within Tadokar Forest, that he was the other son of Mograine, since he had the red hair, he can forge weapons, and he felt destined to be part of something larger, but he never forged a new Ashbringer. With Wrath of the Lich King, we found out that Blizzard did indeed change their minds, and that Darien was now part of the Scourge.
A hero. That's what you once were. You stood boldly against the shadow and purchased another dawn for the world with your life. But the evil you fought is not so easily banished. The victory you claimed, not so easily held. For now, the specter of death looms above the world yet again, and it has found new champions to bring about its final reign. Knights of darkness, wielding runes of death and destruction, bound by the will of the Lich King. This is the hour of their ascension. This is the hour of your dark rebirth.
Fallen heroes of the past were taken by the Lich King and his forces, and they were turned into Death Knights. That adventure begins within the Ebon Hold, and there we got our first look at High Lord Darien Mograine holding the corrupted Ashbringer and listening to its whispers. The Lich King has sent them on the task of eliminating some of the Scarlet Crusade forces, and they have taken up residence within an area still remarkably untouched by the plague. During the DK starting area, we find out that the Crusade is getting ready to travel to Northrend, and it would now call themselves the Scarlet Onslaught. Naturally, they don't stand a chance against the force of the Lich King. Some clever planning, some devastating power and weapons, and this last bit of uncorrupted area, it was quickly turned into Plague Lands as well. With that area conquered, it was time to set our eyes upon the true goal of the Lich King, assaulting Light's Hope Chapel.
Soldiers of the Scourge! Death Knights of Acheron! Minions of the Darkness! Hear the call of the High Lord! Rise! The skies turn red with the blood of the fallen! The Lich King watches over us, minions! Leave all the ashes and misery in your destructive wake!
Stand fast, brothers and sisters! The light will prevail!
Where once Darion was prepared to lay down his life to defend the chapel, now he was actually assaulting the place himself, but the Ashbringer did not want to cooperate.
Obey me, Blade!
I was trying to figure out why the Blade was unwilling to cooperate with Darion, since in the past it had no problem with killing innocents or killing those wielding the light. In its corrupted state, it was more than ready to fight for Alexandros Mograine during his time as one of the horsemen. So I did a bit of research, and some speculate that it was because they were fighting upon holy grounds. Remember that they had moved 1,000 of the most righteous and noble heroes of the past to prevent them from being turned into the undead. It's possible that this area had an effect upon the blade, similar to how they were able to turn it from darkness into light by shooting light at it. Another possibility, and this is purely my speculation, is that the spirit of Alexandros Mograine was still within the blade, and Darion sacrificing himself has cleansed his father of the darkness. This did not release his spirit from the blade though, since after the fight at the chapel, we actually see his spirit show up, he talks to his son, the Lich King showed up, he absorbed Alexandros' soul within Frostmourne, but I personally think that his father, he was trying to prevent Darion from committing this act. Once again, that's just my interpretation though. Either way, the assault upon Light's Hope Chapel, it draws out one of the greatest paladins in history, Tirion Fordring, just as the Lich King had planned. Last we heard about Tirion was that he was living in exile. Darion showed up at his home to find a way to redeem his father, and he asked Tirion to come back to the Argent Dawn. Tirion actually showed up in an attempt to save Light's Hope Chapel. Darion, he stabbed himself with the blade, and after that Tirion returned to his hermit life, but he stayed in touch with the Argent Dawn. During classic World of Warcraft, adventurers could actually find Tirion living out his life as an exile, and Tirion recruited heroes to save his son from the Scarlet Crusade. With the death of Renaud Mograine, the Crusade required a new High Lord, and the Dreadlord Balnazar, he chose Talon Fordring to be this new puppet. With our help, Talon realized that the Scarlet Crusade was corrupted. He tried to step away from it, but he was killed by Grand Inquisitor Ysilian before he could make his escape. In the final confrontation, we fight with Ysilian, and Tirion Fordring, he shows up to avenge his only son. Ysilian is taken down, and upon doing so, Tirion says, "Too long have I sat idle, gripped in this haze, this malice, laminating what could have been, what should have been. Your death will not have been in vain, Talon. A new order is born on this day, an order which will dedicate itself to extinguishing the evil that plagues this world. An evil that cannot hide behind politics and pleasantries. This I promise. This I vow." Tirion plans to reform the original Order of the Silver Hand as a force of good in the world, and he shows up during the assault on Light's Hope Chapel, and he battles with Darion and the forces of the Scourge. They don't stand a chance upon this holy ground. The light is with the Argent Dawn, and with the blade fighting against him, Darion realizes that all is lost.
Stand down, Death Knights! We have lost. The light. This place. No hope!
Have you learned nothing, boy? You have become all that your father fought against. Like that coward Arthas, you allowed yourself to be consumed by the darkness, the hate, feeding upon the misery of those you tortured and killed. Your master knows what lies beneath the chapel. It is why he dares not show his face. He sent you and your Death Knights to meet their doom, Darion. What you are feeling right now is the anguish of 1,000 lost souls. Souls that you and your master brought here. The light will tear you apart, Darion.
Save your breath, old man. It might be the last you ever draw.
My son.
Father!
My dear, beautiful boy.
What?
Father, you have returned.
My son. There will come a day when you will command the Ashbringer, and with it, mete out justice across this land. I have no doubt that when that day finally comes, you will bring pride to our people, and that Liadrin will be a better place because of you. But, my son, that day is not today. Do not forget.
Touching. He's mine now.
You betrayed me. You betrayed us all, monster! Face the might of Mograine!
Pathetic.
You're a damned monster, Arthas.
You were right, Fordring. I did send them in to die. Their lives are meaningless. But yours... How simple it was to draw the great Tyrion Fordring out of hiding. You've left yourself exposed, Paladin. Nothing will save you.
Apocalypse! That day is not today. Tyrion!
Arthas!
What is this?
Your end.
Impossible. Your will. This is not over. When next we meet, it won't be on holy ground, Paladin.
It was never the Lich King's intention to actually win this battle. All he wanted to do was draw out the mighty Tyrion Fordring and remove him from the game. Unfortunately for the Lich King, Darion had other plans in mind. He tosses the Ashbringer to Tyrion, and upon grabbing it, Tyrion's light and conviction, it manages to cleanse the blade and turn it into the weapon it once was. One mighty blow pushes the Lich King back and forces him to retreat, and upon doing so, Tyrion makes another promise.
We have all been witness to a terrible tragedy. The blood of good men has been shed upon this soil. Honorable knights, slain defending their lives. Our lives. And while such things can never be forgotten, we must remain vigilant in our cause. The Lich King must answer for what he has done, and must not be allowed to cause further destruction in our world. I make a promise to you now, brothers and sisters. The Lich King will be defeated. On this day, I call for a union. The Argent Dawn and the Order of the Silver Hand will come together as one. We will succeed where so many before us have failed. We will take the fight to Arthas, and we will tear down the walls of Icecrown. The Argent Crusade comes for you, Arthas!
So too do the Knights of the Ebon Blade. Although our kind has no place in your world, we will fight to bring an end to the Lich King. This I vow.
And so the Argent Crusade and the Knights of the Ebon Blade, they combine their might in the war against the Lich King. Tyrion writes out letters for new Death Knights to take with them as they meet the respective leaders, so that they wouldn't simply be cast out as undead. Now getting to Northrend, it was simple enough, but bringing the Ashbringer and Tyrion himself, that required a plan, since the Lich King knew that these two were a great threat to his plans. Within the Howling Fjord, we find a cleric of the Crusade, and as you do the quest, you're sent in to the Utgard catacombs. In the depths below, Ares the Oathbound, he gasps for air as he tries to speak. He's an envoy of the Argent Crusade, charged with a sacred duty, but the artifact that he was trying to deliver has been hurled far below into the Den of the Fallen. Ares places a blessing of the light upon us, which is so strong and so bright that none of the undead are able to even get close. We collect the sacred artifact, we bring it back to Ares, but it's too late to do anything for him. His time has come, the light will surely embrace him, and his final wish is for us to fulfill his oath and bring the artifact back to Lord Irulan Trueblade. Upon returning the artifact, we find out that it was actually the Ashbringer that was nearly lost to us, and High Lord Tyrion Fordring removes his disguise. To get him and the blade safely to Northrend, they came up with a plan to travel separately, with the hope of going undetected and not drawing any unwanted attention from the Lich King. Many have already given their lives to the redemption of the blade, and now even more have died to bring it to Northrend. Tyrion, he's done with playing hide and seek, he's done with letting others sacrifice themselves for the greater good. It was his burden to bear, and now that he's reunited with the blade, it's time to assault Northrend and take the battle to Arthas. Several storylines and several campaigns took place across Northrend, but this video it's focused upon the Ashbringer, so I'll try to focus on that. We help out Tyrion and the Crusade with building up a forward base within Icecrown, and we help the Knights of the Ebonblade with taking the Shadow Vault away from the Lich King. During our questing, we're sent below Icecrown Citadel to blow up a bomb and expose a weakness within the structure. They're unsure why it's there, but capture diagrams, it shows an orifice leading several hundred feet into the ground. It seems to be very important to the Scourge, and it could be a great opening within the defense of the Citadel, but not all goes to plan. The fuse is way too short. We fall down way below the Citadel into Nazanak, the Forgotten Depths. Thankfully for us, a pool of water prevents us from dying a horrible death, and within the pool rests a strange pulsing object covered in a thick layer of ice. As we touch the object, a horrible pain courses through our body. It feels as if the hand has been cut, yet there's no visible wounds. As we try to collect our thoughts, a strange boy waiting nearby tells us that we really shouldn't have done that. The boy turns out to be Matthias Laner, which is an anagram for Arthas Menethil. This image, this ghost of a boy, it's apparently the last remaining good side of Arthas, which he stabbed with Frostmourne in the novel Rise of the Lich King. Stabbing things in your mind, even with a mighty blade such as Frostmourne, apparently doesn't really kill anything, since the boy is here and he says that he saw him get rid of it. He threw it all the way down here and said that he wouldn't need it anymore. He said that it made him weak. As you follow the questline through Icecrown, you'll find out that the item that we touched, it was actually Arthas' own heart, which he cut out after his battle with Illidan. He had discovered that his heart was still holding him back. He realized that the last part of his humanity, his emotions, his feelings, being able to bleed, all of it was a weakness, and he decided that he wouldn't be weak. He cut out his own heart, he tossed it in the Forgotten Kingdom, and we were the first person to touch its sins. Now Arthas knows that we found the artifact, and he will not leave it unguarded again. We bring this information back to Tyrion Fordring, and Tyrion, he was already informed by his scouts that members of the Cult of the Damned, they were leaving from Icecrown Citadel to the Cathedral of Darkness. With them, they brought an artifact, and now he realizes that this artifact is actually Arthas' heart, and Tyrion believes that as long as such an artifact exists, there might be a chance that Arthas Menethil can become a man again. We're asked to join him at the Cathedral of Darkness, where we disguise ourselves as one of the cultists, and as expected, the artifact is brought in the cathedral, but the Lich King himself has made sure to show up and keep it safe. Our disguise might have fooled the cultist, but Arthas is not so easily fooled. He immediately realizes that they have some unwanted guests, and Tyrion Fordring has seen enough. He wanted to go there in an attempt to try and redeem Arthas, but seeing the artifact for himself, he realizes that there's no redemption possible. Arthas might have an advantage, seeing how we're upon his unholy ground now, but Tyrion, he doesn't need any advantage to run the Ashbringer through Arthas' cold, dark heart. Only shadows from the past remain, there's nothing to redeem, so Tyrion, he jumps up and with a powerful strike, he destroys the heart, dealing massive damage to the Lich King, but also knocking himself himself out in the process. The disguised crusaders that came with us, they quickly surround Tyrion's unconscious body to keep him safe, but thankfully we're not alone. The Knights of the Ebonblade, Darien Mograine and several others, they show up, they take out the cultists that were surrounding us, and even though some wanted to stay behind to finish off the Lich King, Darien decides that they have to go. Patience is key, and for once Tyrion Fordring is actually in their depth, so they quickly retreat and they avoid the Lich King's terrible fury. Tyrion did not see any of this as a failure. This mission allowed him to see the truth of it all, to confirm that there was nothing left of Arthas, and that all that remained was the Lich King. After this moment, they held a little tournament to kill some time, to find out who was ready and worthy to join them in their assault upon Icecrown Citadel itself. The time of planning, of trying to find weaknesses, of trying to assault from the back door, all of that was over and done with. The hour of justice had come as we knocked down the front door and we got ready to end Arthas' reign as the Lich King.
Rise up, Argent Crusaders! The hour of justice has come!
Can you feel it, my son? Closing in all around you. The light's justice has been awakened. The sins of the past have finally caught up to you. You will be called to account for all the atrocities you've committed. The unspeakable horrors you've let loose upon this world. And the dark, ancient powers you've enslaved. Soul was one of the first to be devoured by your evil. There are thousands more bound within this blade, and they cry out for release. Look now to your defenses, my son, for the champions of justice gather at your gates.
Countless abominations of the Scourge, they fell as heroes from both the Alliance and the Horde. They made their way through Icecrown Citadel, while Tyrion, he saved his strength for the final confrontation.
So, the Light's vaunted justice has finally arrived. Shall I lay down Frostmourne and throw myself at your mercy, Fordring?
We'll grant you a swift death, Arthas. More than can be said for the thousands you've tortured and slain.
You'll learn of that firsthand. When my work is complete, you will beg for mercy, and I will deny you. Your anguished cries will be testament to my unbridled power.
So be it. Champions, attack!
I'll keep you alive to witness the end, Fordring. I would not want the Light's greatest champion to miss seeing this wretched world remade in my image.
The Lich King had been testing us, molding us to create the greatest fighting force the world had ever seen. All his plans, his schemes, taunting us along the way, it all led to this final confrontation. We did our very best, but the power of Frostmourne and the Lich King, it was simply too much. One single blow took out entire raid teams, and Arthas' plans, they were successful. They lay dead at his feet, all he had to do was resurrect them, and nothing in this world would be able to stand up against him. Unfortunately for the Lich King, Tyrion had the light at his side.
Light, grant me one final blessing. Give me the strength to shatter these bonds.
One strike, the combined might of Tyrion and the Ashbringer. In the hour of need, the light came through and Frostmourne is shattered. The vengeful spirits of uncountable souls claimed by the blade through the years, they're set free. They hold Arthas in the air, while the spirit of his father resurrects the heroes, and together we finish the job.
Now I stand, the lion before the lambs, and they do not fear. They cannot fear.
The helm of domination, it falls on the ground and Arthas has been defeated. But there must always be a Lich King. Tyrion believes that he's the one to place the helmet on his head, become the jailer of the damned. But Bolvar 4 Dragon, he steps up to the plate and he takes Tyrion's place. This means that Tyrion and the Ashbringer, they get to go home, fulfill their own destiny. But so far, they haven't done much. With the Cataclysm revamp, you can find Tyrion in his old home of Hearthglen, where they're fighting against the last remaining forces of the Scarlet Crusade, while also trying to cleanse the Plague Lands. Time will tell if Tyrion and the Ashbringer will ever get to play a part in the story again, but for now, that's the story of the Ashbringer. There is, however, one last bit of speculation to do. What exactly is the Ashbringer made of? We know that the artifact, it was found from an Orcish warlock, and when Alexandros found it, it was pure darkness. Later, they infused it with the holy light, it turned to the light side again, only to turn to darkness once Renaud betrayed his father. It's uncertain what exactly the artifact was, but it seems like it came with the orcs from the planet of Draenor. A similar cycle of light and darkness can be found within the game, since the Naaru, they show a very similar thing. Naaru are beings of pure light, but we've seen several that turn to darkness because they either fell ill, or in the case of Mauru, because the Blood Elves drained his light. But over time, Naaru are able to regain their light. A most recent example is the Naaru Ka'ara on Draenor, which Ner'zhul tried to call upon. They called it the Dark Star. Velen stepped in, sacrificed his own being, his own light, and he turned Ka'ara back into her holy state. With Mauru and the Blood Elves, we've seen what happened when you push a Naaru even further. Since Mauru, he was so drained that he turned to a void god called Entropius. If you want more details about the Naaru, then please check out my video about the Naaru, but the whole cycle of light and darkness, it seems very similar to what happened with the Ashbringer. Unfortunately, we don't know for certain. Maybe Blizzard will ever give a clear answer about this, but for now, I personally think that the Naaru theory is a solid one. Which Naaru is hard to say. Some say it's the Naaru Ka'ara, but it could be anything, to be honest. It could be any Naaru. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Naaru at all. Some speculate that it's one of the Atamal crystals that they used. Velen brought 7 crystals with him, all had different powers. We simply don't know, but what we can be certain about is that the Ashbringer is one hell of a weapon. It truly was a scourge against the scourge. Even though they tried to get it to the dark side, the light prevailed and ultimately meant the destruction of Frostmourne and the downfall of Arthas himself. I truly hope that we'll get more story with all of this, perhaps something involving Sylvanas, Bolvar, Tyrion, Knights of the Ebon Blade, Lady Liadrin, all that good stuff. I really hope that we'll get more. I also wonder if we'll ever see the vision that Velen has seen. If you've read Velen's short story, you know that he saw a vision for Anduin Wrynn. A vision of a possible future perhaps, where Anduin, he was fighting in armor and weapons infused with the light itself. And when I was reading this storyline, it felt to me like Anduin was wielding the Ashbringer. I think that could be really cool, but only time will tell what Blizzard is going to do with the story. But for now, that's the end of my video. Bonjour! Yrel was a character introduced within Warlords of Draenor, the beloved expansion which took us not only to an alternate reality, but also back in time. Around 35 years from our perspective to the home world of the orcs called Draenor, just around the time where they started their war with the Draenei. This time, not because of Kil'jaeden, Gul'dan and the Legion. This time, they started the war under the leadership of Grommash Hellscream and his alternate son Garrosh.
Times change.
Garrosh Hellscream, of our reality. He showed Grommash bits and pieces of the future. He convinced him not to drink the demonic blood offered by Gul'dan, and instead form the Iron Horde to take over Azeroth, with turning the Dark Portal red.
This is our chance. Storm the portal!
But times definitely change, and heroes of Azeroth, Horde and Alliance alike, they quickly rallied together to kick some Iron Horde butt. They stepped through the portal and took the battle to them. Gul'dan and the Shadow Council are set free to disconnect the portal from Azeroth, but this does leave our heroes stranded on Draenor and they have to run for their lives. This leads them through Tanaan jungle into the Umbro Halls, a cave full of the Shadowmoon clan which we need to clear out. And inside, that is the moment where we meet up with Yrel for the first time.
Who's there? Oh, I'm glad I'm not the only one fighting these monsters.
Her description from the WoW website, it describes her as the following. Born on Draenor, the sanctuary of the exiled Draenei, Yrel was dedicated to her faith. She grew up in the Temple of Karabor, the center of the holy light for her people, and served as an acolyte. Devoted to her beliefs and her studies, she showed promise as a healer. Prophet Velen noticed her talent. He invited her to train as his pupil, and began to teach her the value of leadership and sacrifice. But Yrel carried a dark secret within her. Velen sensed it, and he foresaw that for good or ill, she had a larger role to play. Yet, when she considered her prospects, Yrel preferred to stay inside the temple, quietly caring for those around her. Unfortunately, that ideal did not survive. Her peaceful life was shattered when the savage orc clans forced themselves into a fighting force named the Iron Horde, and they set out to conquer Draenor. Yrel was captured and flung into a war. Now she stands at the brink of greatness. Whatever her fate, Yrel is not destined to remain a humble acolyte within the Temple of Karabor. Draenor is in danger, and she's called to do something more, to shield her people from oblivion. The dark secret that Velen sensed that didn't really play a part during Draenor, and since her origin story that was kept such a secret, fans took it upon themselves to give their own spin to it, and let's just say that they came up with some very creative ideas. Now I don't think that those ideas have ever been picked up and made canon, so instead we fight against the warlords and we try to get out of Tanaan jungle with our skins intact. Their own weaponry is turned against them as we blow up the foundation of the portal and quickly set sail to either Frostfire Ridge if you play for the Horde, or to Shadowmoon Valley if you play for the Alliance.
Keep moving! I see the ships ahead!
Since that's the location where Yrel is going to go, that's the path we're going to follow as we meet up with alternate Prophet Velen.
Prophet, this hero and many others from another world have come to aid us.
It is good to see you, my child. My people welcome your aid, champion. Come with me.
Prophet, I must warn you. The Iron Horde intends to strike out against all who oppose them. We must prepare our defenses.
We will deal with one problem at a time. First, we must settle your people.
Armarat joined us on this mission with quite a chip on his shoulder. As in our timeline, he was ordered to help guide the people out of Shefrev, but instead of providing them with the guidance of the light, he chose to go for vengeance. When he returned, he found those depending on his protection slaughtered.
But if there is even the barest chance of preventing the atrocities I witnessed from happening again, then I offer myself gladly.
That chance would come soon enough, but first we work on setting up our garrison and helping out Marat with gathering supplies for our troops, as well as convincing the Council of Exarchs to join us in the fight against the Iron Horde. In the meantime, Yrel is kind enough to show us around, and the first village that she wants to take us to, that is Embari village, where her sister Samara is waiting for us.
Yrel, have you come back from the dead?
It will take more than some orcs to defeat me.
Yrel!
Yeah,
You've
you're
come to
here!
save us!
Samara, I'm back!
Yrel? After the Iron Horde took you, I feared the worst.
The light granted me strength when I needed it most. It is good to be home.
Yrel is obviously loved by her people, and they're very happy, but also very surprised to see that she survived being taken by the Iron Horde to the Tanaan jungle. Now Shadowmoon Valley, that does not only house the Draenei, it also home to the Shadowmoon clan led by Warlord Ner'zhul. He now serves the Iron Horde and Grommash in order to save his people from their wrath, breaking all ancient vows and tapping into the powers of something that they have named the Darkstar. This is actually a fallen Naru that was ejected when the Draenei crash landed on Draenor. This was many years ago, and their ancestors, they quickly found out that meddling with the powers of the Void, that was no good. Ner'zhul needed it to save his people though. He needs even more of its power now, so with the Horde on the attack, he decides to kidnap many of the Draenei, including Yrel's sister Samara.
No! Samara! Ner'zhul! Stop this! What do you want?
Your blood will grant me the powers of the Darkstar. To Shazgul with you.
Yrel! No!
Tell your prophet that his era is over. Darkness dawns.
Ner'zhul leaves us with Karnov, a shard of the Darkstar. Darkness, which we quickly cast out, but we still need to save her sister and stop the threat of the Shadowmoon clan. Velen, he doesn't want to use aggression, but he also can't let his people just be taken.
Master
Arkinan
I have never led soldiers before. Are you sure?
You are capable of more than you know, Yrel. Now go. The Rangari follow your orders. Find the prisoners.
She's still very insecure about her capabilities, so we join Yrel on our mission into Shazgul. We place some bombs here and there, but unfortunately, things didn't go exactly well for her party, and we find them captured by the orcs.
Your security is lax, chieftain. I caught these Rangari spies within your gates. They are too late. The prisoners are already on their way to Anguish Fortress. Their blood will summon forth the Darkstar and make me as a guard among the Iron Horde.
Yrel loses all faith in herself. These Draenei, they sacrifice their lives under her leadership. It's hopeless. How are we going to get out of here? But some quick words of encouragement, it gives her the strength needed to push on.
You are truly wise, champion. I must believe in myself, for I carry the light within me. Detonating the explosives, now!
Look! Fire! There are still enemies among us. Everyone to arms! Seal the exits! No Draenei scum leaves this village alive!
The light answers her call, as together we not only fight a way out of Shazgul, we also infiltrate Anguish Fortress and save as many of the Draenei as we can. Ner'zhul still has Samara though, and proudly shows Grommash what he's been able to do so far.
Over here, hero, before they see us. Listen, they're talking about the Darkstar.
Behold my power, War Chief Hellscream. With my clan at your side, you will be unstoppable.
The void hungers.
Well done, Ner'zhul. We attack Karabor soon. Summon forth the Darkstar. I will begin my preparations at once.
What is that monstrosity?
It is but a fraction of the Darkstar's power.
We'll see about that. Samara! No! No!
Yrel, do not be sad. I did not choose this fate. But you can still choose. Be strong, little one. I will be watching over you.
Samara, I swear to you, I will become strong. I will protect our people. I will fight. Come, champion. I will need your help to crash this Iron Horde.
A person can only take so much, and for Yrel, seeing her beloved sister die like that, it was a breaking point. Her time just caring for people inside the temple that has truly come to an end, as the threat of the Iron Horde, it cannot be ignored. Prophet Velen has seen a possible vision of the future, one in which Karabor, or as we know it today, the Black Temple, it fell to the Iron Horde because of the Dark Star. We cannot let Ner'zhul succeed, but the Orc forces are already moving in for the attack, while Marat joins the defenders and tries to hold them off for as long as they can. We join Velen and Yrel as they confront Ner'zhul, who's busy summoning the powers of the Dark Star.
You are just in time. Witness the dark majesty of the Void. I will save my clan, even if I must forfeit the souls of my ancestors. Darkness is my strength. With this power, the Shadow Moon will be conquerors! It is not too late. Turn from this dark path, and let us help you! The shadows have already consumed my soul, Prophet. There is no darkness light cannot pierce, Ner'zhul. No! The power of the Dark Star will be mine! Behold! The Dark Star falls now upon you. The Iron Horde will prevail. And all that stand against us will die.
There is no darkness that the light cannot pierce, as Velen sacrificed his own life to restore the Naru Ka'ara back to its holy and pure state. Even after all these years, I don't believe that they've actually given a lore reason to the transfer of the symbol. If they did, then by all means, please let me know the source, but I think it was more done for the sake of the cinematic rather than for the story. Either way, Kara is no longer a threat, quite the opposite, as she now empowers the Draenei and she gives us the strength needed to save Karabor.
We need to spread news of our victory. Take the Fey Dragon and meet me back at your garrison. Hero, you fought fearlessly. For that, please accept my thanks. The light prevails, because we stand against the darkness.
It is done. Victory is ours.
You have inspired me, Commander. I've seen you and your armies win many hard-fought battles across Draenor. We now face our greatest challenge as we attempt to unite against the Iron Horde.
Victory is ours today. Shadowmoon Valley's been secured for the Draenei, and our garrison, it stands strong. Ner'zhul would find his ultimate fate within the Shadowmoon burial grounds, but our story with Yrel, that takes us into Gorgrond.
We should have brought an army to fight the Iron Horde.
Gorgrond is no place for armies. This land swallows all who enter. We will be fortunate to even lay eyes upon the Iron Horde base.
This is an area also visited by the Horde players once they finish their experience within Frostfire Ridge, and not really a lot of happens for Yrel here. Basically, we're here to uncover the secrets of the land to potentially use it against the Iron Hordes. We do see Marat's anger towards the orcs flare up a little bit. This was supposed to be quite a story arc for him, as in the Burning Crusade he was introduced, they never used him. He was supposed to get this massive storyline at Draenor, but you'll see a pattern in this. It fell a little bit short. So in Gorgrond, we're on the path of finding an artifact called the Will of the Janissar. It has the power to control the ancient primal beings of the land, beings of raw power. And what better way to use it than to turn it against the Iron Horde? Whereas the Horde, they party with Draka of the Frostwolf clan, the Alliance has Yrel.
There it is. There's my artifact. How foolish of me to trust Brack with something so valuable. It's a shame that you're too late to stop me. Surrender the artifact, and I will allow you to escape with your lives.
We will never surrender to you! Champion, now is the time. Use the artifact!
So be it. Iron Horde, advance! No! I will die before I let you take what is mine. You will not win this war!
The artifact! What has he done? We must restore it! We must get it to safety!
See what weapons I have in my arsenal!
With pleasure. Brace yourself, champion. The light is with you. I will not let you fall.
Release the Iron Stars!
It is over. Their defenses are shattered. We have won this battle. But without the artifact, we have far to go. Let us rally back at your garrison, Commander. We must plan our next course of attack.
The artifact has been rendered useless, but victory in Gorgrond is ours, and we even gained several new powerful allies. Now the Iron Horde, they did manage to get a fleet of ships out of Gorgrond, and they're getting ready to assault Talador and the former capital of the Draenei, Shefrev City. This area is the crossroads for the entire continent, so we cannot let the Iron Horde have it. However, we're going to save that part of the story for next week, as I still have quite a bit to cover when it comes to Yrel. I hope you now have a better understanding of her origin story, where she came from, and what pushed her into this war. The dark secrets and destined for great things that Velen sensed in her, the relation with Marat that she's building up. Let's take that with us to next week, as then we'll finish up the story. Samara sacrificed. Velen sacrificed himself to restore the Nare to its holy state, while in Gorgrond, a powerful artifact is used against the Iron Horde. The enemy, they managed to get a fleet of ships out of Gorgrond, and they're getting ready to assault Talador and the former capital of the Draenei, Shefrev City. This area is the crossroads for the whole continent, so we can't let them have it. Under the guidance of Khadgar, Alliance and Horde must work together on this. Durthan and Draka, as well as Yrel and Marat, they're ready to siege the city and kick the Iron Horde out. With a stolen Iron Star, we roll through the Iron Horde's forces straight to the docks. Their fleet is on the attack, and one of the battleships has a powerful weapon aboard. We need to disable that weapon, so our forces, they keep the enemy busy, as Khadgar charges up a mighty spell to freeze them in place. Draka is sent off to look for survivors, while the rest of them assault Warlord Blackhand, giving us the time to track down their super weapon, and of course disable it. Blackhand won't go down without a fight though, so we quickly rush over to lend them a hand.
Didn't anyone ever tell you not to play with fire?
It's over. No one could have survived that.
This vessel is set to blow. We should get to safety.
Bring the cannon around. We'll send both of these ships to the bottom of the sea.
Marat. How?
In the light, we are one. I see now.
What do you want, little girl?
Your head.
Cannon is in position! On your command.
Prepare to fire. Such arrogance to believe that you alone could defeat me.
Together.
Wait! They're alive!
I've got them.
You will all die!
Just you.
We did some massive damage to the Iron Hordes. Not only did we take out some mighty weaponry and prevent them from taking over the area, we nearly took out Warlord Blackhand. Unfortunately, he would survive this explosion and show up later within the Blackrock Foundry, but the same could sadly not be said for Orgrim Doomhammer and Armarad. Armarad sacrificed his life to keep Yrel safe, leaving her with the words,
"In the light, we are one."
This would be the last time that we see him, but that's a little bit later on. Time to grieve will come later, as our battle against the Iron Horde continues. First, there was the Spies of Arak, where we party with the Arakoa, but Yrel doesn't really play a part in that area. And then Nagrand, home to the Warsong clan, and the new war chief Garrosh. With Gromash leading the Iron Hordes, he left our Garrosh to lead the clan. The orc that escaped his justice and Azeroth, he must be made to pay. So our combined forces assault Gromashar to once again kick him out of the mantle of war chief. Notice how Yrel has taken up Marad's title of Vindicator, as well as his weapon.
We must never rest.
Come, Draenei Witch! I'm waiting.
Dakan, I need you and our forces to stay here. Buy us the time we need to deal with Garrosh.
Whatever happens, Marad would be proud of you.
Blow open these gates! You're a fool to come here! You think after everything, you can kill me!
We'll bring you to justice, monster!
Justice? You don't know the meaning of the word! I cannot be defeated! Now, you die. Garrosh! Thrall! You're too late, old friend. No, no more, Garrosh. Just you and me. I challenge you to Mak'gora!
Thrall! No!
Very well, Shaman. We finish this alone, where it all began, at the Stones of Prophecy.
Despite giving it all we got, this kill would not belong to us. Instead, it's our Thrall that steps up to the plate to rectify the mistakes of the past. It was he, despite voices telling him not to, that made Garrosh War Chief of the Horde, and it would be he that would take care of him now. The one responsible of forming the Iron Hordes. He lies dead in the ground, but it doesn't remove their threat entirely. They still have allies in the Ogres of Heimal. Blackhand and his forces, they're still churning out weapons at the Blackrock Foundry. And of course Gromash is still leading the Iron Hordes. Step by step, we worked on dismantling them, but this offered an opportunity for Kil'jaeden, as he once again showed up and he offered the orcs that delicious demon blood. This time, some amongst the orcs did accept his gift, with Gromash placed in chains. One leader exchanged for another, one that's even far more dangerous, with the might of the Legion backing him up.
The might of a Legion.
Hellfire Citadel's waiting for us, but before we enter the raid, we must talk about Yrel and her trial of becoming an Exarch. The Council of Exarchs in Draenor, they're the leaders of the Draenei, and they answer only to Prophet Velen. But during our questing in Shadowmoon Valley, we find out that one of the Exarchs, namely Uther, he switched sides and he teamed up with the Legion. He had another Exarch killed, Exarch Hataru, and he tried to kill Exarch Maladar by giving him up to the Iron Horde. But we rescued Maladar in the Tanaan jungle, and we expose Uther for the betrayer that he is. In that confrontation, Uther transformed and he took on his new name, Sokrevar, but we were unable to stop him in that moment, and he actually showed up as a boss within Hellfire Citadel. All in all though, the Council of Exarchs could definitely use some new recruits, and we're going to help Yrel with getting that position.
We must hold on. To become an Exarch, I must first pass through a series of trials. I am allowed one champion to accompany me along this journey. I would like that person to be you, hero. I am ready. Come, the Exarch Council awaits.
3 trials are given to Yrel in order for her to prove herself worthy of becoming an Exarch. The first trial that sends her over to Nagrand to help clear the corruption in the Cerulean Lagoon, which is caused by a creature called Plague Bloom. Together, we take out the creature, only to fight against the primal fury Everburn in the cold of Frostfire Ridge.
Well done, champion! Akama's task is finished. I cannot wait to see his face when we report on our success.
The second trial that takes us on a holy pilgrimage to the Draenei's sacred burial grounds called Akandun.
Ah, welcome, Vindicator Yrel. I see you have come for Maladar's trial. The spirits sense your purpose. They already grow eager to challenge you.
It is my honor to face the heroes of the ancient past. They will not find me lacking.
Good luck, Lady Yrel.
Inside, Yrel is tested by the guardians of Akandun and even the spirit of Hataru, the Exarch that was murdered by Uther.
Yrel, this is how I always wished to see you. Do not let me down.
Greetings, teacher. Let me show you what I have learned in my travels.
You have exceeded all my hopes, Yrel. You may proceed.
Yrel's trial is not the only reason why we're here. Marad, who so heroically gave up his life for his people and Yrel, his ashes will be placed to rest amongst his people.
Now, to lay Marad's ashes to rest.
Yrel, how you have grown since last we met. But is it enough? Are you worthy of leading our people? Now it is my turn to test your strength. When you face a more powerful foe, will you stand strong?
Do not fear, for I will stand.
When all hope is lost, will you still fight?
I shall never yield!
When you look inside yourself and see only darkness, can you still find the light?
I can!
What was that?
Because in this world, we are never alone! Hero, use the hammer now!
Yrel, it is true. The student has surpassed the teacher. You are ready. If only Prophet Velen could see you now, he would be proud. Rise, Yrel. It is your charge to unite the Draenei. Prepare them for what's to come. Farewell.
Marad, my friend, be at peace.
Even Marad has given Yrel his blessing, but her trials are not over yet.
Never.
One final trial awaits, Yrel. Us. You have chosen your champion. Now, let us begin.
3 against 2, and still Yrel's devotion to the light, combined with our experience and power, it manages to overtake the council and complete her trials.
Remember, today you have completed the trials of the Exarch. You have proven courage, kindness, faith, and strength, pillars upon which our society has arisen. However, we measure a leader not only by her merit, but also by the character of her companions. Champion, we have watched you throughout this trial. We saw your bravery in Frostfire, your persistence in Nagrand, and your loyalty in Akandun. Your dedication to Lady Yrel proves to us that she is worthy. We did not choose the next Exarch. You did. Yrel, do not forget that an exceptional leader inspires greatness in others. Trust in your people and trust in yourself. Now, rise! Exarch Yrel!
It is time to take a stand.
Together, we've proven are worthy of taking up a spot within the Council of Exarchs. Quite a change from our days inside the temple, and she, as well as the Draenei, our gathered forces, the Horde as well, all of us made ready to confront Grommash Hellscream and his Iron Horde. But Gul'dan, he had quite other plans in mind. He made use of us dismantling the Iron Horde, the demonic blood was taken by some of the orcs, and Grommash was placed in chains. This left us with Hellfire Citadel waiting to besiege, as we had to take care of the threat presented by Gul'dan, the Legion, and his fell Iron Horde. Inside, we ran into bosses that were built up throughout the expansion. For example, we had Sokrafar and Terangor. We even liberated Grommash, who quickly joined us in the final confrontation, where we saw Gul'dan play his final hand and summon the mighty Archcommand into Draenor. Durotan, Khadgar, Grommash and Yrel, together with the Alliance and the Horde, they did not back down. They rallied their forces and gave it all they got. Together they stood, their bond was iron, as they brought down our commands.
It's done. Gul'dan failed. Draenor is free!
You don't think it's over?
Gul'dan and the devils that command him are not so easily banished. I fear this is only beginning.
If you ever need us, we will be here.
Until we meet again.
A great man once told me, in the light, we are one. The future is ours, and we will see Draenor rebuilt. Together.
Our command was able to send over Gul'dan to our reality, which then in turn would kick off the Expansion Legion, but the day had been saved for alternate Draenor. Sadly, Warlords of Draenor had quite a habit of dropping certain storylines. In this case, we see Grommash Hellscream, the one who kicked off the invasion into Azeroth and is responsible for the death of Yrel's sister. He just turns around, he screams that Draenor is free, and that's the end of it. No real consequence for his actions, no real dialogue to talk things out. But like I said, Warlords, it didn't finish all the stories that it built up. Now this part, we're going to dive into spoiler territory for Battle for Azeroth, so if you don't want any spoilers, then this is the story of Yrel so far. A priest spending her days in her temple comforting her people, but the events of the outside world, they could not be ignored, and through great pain, loss and sacrifice, she rose up and defended her people. She proved herself time and time again, became an exarch, and stood shoulder to shoulder with the orcs to extinguish the fell of the Legion encroaching upon their worlds.
Together.
So what my Battle for Azeroth holds? Well, as some of you pointed out, I unfortunately did the story to my god orcs just a few days too early, as some delicious data mining information has come to the surface. For those unaware, my god orcs, or uncorrupted orcs, they're going to be an allied race for the Hordes. With Eitrigg and the aid of the Bronze Dragonflight, we're going to reopen a portal to alternate Draenor to recruit them, but this time, the portal is not going to take us back in time, like 35 years in the past. It seems like the portal is going to sync up our timelines. That means that quite a few years have passed, with the orcs and Draenei living together on Draenor, and even during the story of the Magad, I wondered, what kind of world would that be?
Try spending a few decades trapped on a planet with fanatical Draenei and see how you like it!
Turns out, not exactly great. The moment that the Horde arrives back on alternate Draenor, they're chained up and presented to Overlord Kjara as her prisoners. Where in our reality, Durotan and Draka had a son named Goel, also known as Vrol. The changes to this reality, it caused them to have a daughter named Kjara. We try to explain who we are, to which Kajara has us go through a little test to see if we truly know the history of the clans that are now united as Magar. It also turns out that Gromar's Hellscream is still alive and kicking. He remembers those that came from Azeroth, and Yrel tells him that heroes from his world, they once saved the alternates from the grip of tyrants. Now Azeroth faces a similar threat, so we have come to ask repayment of that debt. Considering that he's recruited the Magar to join the Horde, this means that Yrel sees the threat of the Alliance similar to tyrants. Now, even though they owe a debt to us, the Magar still face threats of their own. They can't just pledge their soldiers to go off to some far-off world. So first, we must help them with their problems. So we ride out to take care of an ogre instigator. That's not the only thing that they're dealing with though, as Kajara lets us know that her mother Draka, she still has a garrison in the Grand, so she's still alive. But her father Duratan, he fell in battle to something that they called the Lightbound. After Archimonde's fall, the orcs and Draenei worked together to drive the leftover legion from Draenor. Those were the good years, but without demons to fight, the Draenei became fixated upon their precious light. Their Naru masters compelled them to spread their influence amongst the orcs. A few of them converted willingly, others had the light forced upon them. Some orcs even sided with the Draenei against their kin. Even the Warchief's own son was lost. They call these traitors Lightbound, and with Warchief's son, I imagine Warchief Gromar's Hellscream, that he had a child anyways, a child who sided with the Draenei. This is of course a very similar motive as we seen with Zera during Legion. As a being of the light, she could only see one side of the coin, could only see one side of a possible future, one in which she saw Illidan become the child of shadow and light. But when Illidan was uncertain, when Illidan did not want the light to take away all that he was, she tried to enforce it upon him, leading to one of the most edgiest moments within Warcraft history.
The light will heal your scars.
I am my scars!
The light is your destiny.
My destiny is my own!
He destroyed Zera, and it seems like the Naru are now compelling the Draenei of alternate Draenor to do a similar thing. Yrel and the Horde join the Magar in battle against the Draenei and these Lightbound orcs. We earn ourselves a little victory. We report back to the Warchief, with Kajara now having quite warmed up to Yrel and the Horde, and they decide to honor their debt and join them on Azeroth. As plans are being made to return home, an army approaches. All of them are coming for the Magar. Gromash quickly tells them to gather every orc that they see and bring them here. The battle is surely gonna be great, but the Light's numbers are simply too many. They cannot hold this line forever, as the leader of the Draenei, the High Exarch, reveals herself. This is none other than Yrel, who leads these forces and confronts Gromash.
Very well, Gromash. Then we will come for you.
She offers him one last chance to embrace the light. The orcs are choking the life from this world, dooming the land to desiccation. But Gromash, he calls her blind. It's actually the light that has doomed their world. It pains her to lose an old friend, but they'll settle it his way. As Gromash tells everyone to get out of there, I imagine that we quickly make her escape as he enters in Makura, and then who actually knows? The recruitment scenario is sadly not available in-game for testing quite yet, so it's a little bit up in the air on how all of it's going to go down and what exactly is going on. It seems like Draenor is still going through the corruption, as we saw with our Draenor. It's not doing too well, with both sides blaming each other. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised if the land was doomed because of Gul'dan's actions, and they simply started to point fingers at each other. But what's interesting is that one of the random battle cries that the Lightbound shout out, they say,
"Heed the High Exarch's visions."
Yrel was never portrayed as someone who had the power to see the future, unless they actually decide to give that symbol transfer a lore reason, but then you have to wonder why she didn't show any prophetic powers in the expansion Wars of Draenor. It's more likely that these visions, if she actually even has visions, are bestowed upon her by the Naru. Again, there was a very big plot point developed in Legion. Neither the light nor the shadow can see the full truth, and not all the visions of the future can be trusted. That is, if she even has prophetic visions, and not just a vision that she came up with herself. That's also a realistic possibility. Let's not forget that when we met Yrel in Draenor, she was insecure about leading a group of Rangari, and then slowly but surely she's pushed into the role of Exarch, and now even High Exarch. Perhaps Marat's words of "in the light we are one," it had her motivate to bring everyone together under the light, despite if they wanted to or not. Who knows, but when this information came out, I saw a whole lot of discussion about this, and some people, they really like it, some really hate it. It's all personal taste. I personally find it really interesting that they're taking a concept touched upon within Legion and now expand it further in this alternate reality. Is the example that we saw with Zera not just a contained incident, but something spread amongst all the Naru? Or is this just what happens with the Draenei when they find themselves in times of peace? Or is this more an individual responsibility? Is it truly Yrel to blame for the path that the Draenei took? Why did the son of Gromash turn away from his roots and decide to ally with the Draenei? Is the whole force in the light a similar thing that happened to Lofrexian when he became a Light Dreadlord? Hate it or love it, at least it's an interesting development, and it definitely gets people talking, and for that I can appreciate it.
You want to know what my dark secret is? I see dead people. Kidding! About that being my secret, that is. We Draenei see dead people all the time.
Can't wait to see it all play out in game. Perhaps to actually use the storyline and build upon it further within Battle for Azeroth. Perhaps we'll get a story arc with the Light, a story arc with the Void, and then at the end we're going to learn like, oh yeah, we're going to need both sides in order to find balance. Something like that. Can't wait to find out. Hello everyone. Last week we talked about the story of Ner'zhul, from him being deceived by Kil'jaeden, all the way to the moment where Ner'zhul was tortured and given a new purpose by Kil'jaeden. This week we're going to go back in time a few years before that moment, and we're going to talk about the story of Arthas, for these two characters would soon become very much connected. Let's begin, shall we? The moment young Prince Arthas is introduced into the storyline, he's at the age of 9, helping out at the Balnir farmstead. Yoren Balnir and his son Yerim, they're guiding one of their horses called Brightmane as she's giving birth, and the prince was right there to witness this miracle. You might say that sitting on the ground trying to soothe a horse as she's giving birth, that is no place for royalty, but Arthas liked to spend his time amongst the common people, something that made him beloved by all, and his father allowed it. As Brightmane's son came into the world, Arthas locked eyes and he immediately felt a connection. As disgusting as the miracle of birth had been, this very moment was pretty miraculous indeed. Just a few moments later, a horse rode up to the farm. Uther the Lightbringer had come to bring Arthas back to the palace. A rider from Southshore had brought ill news. Stormwind, at this time, it had fallen to the might of the first Orcish horde, and the survivors had come to Lordaeron to seek help. Anduin Lothar, champion of Stormwind, together with the mage Khadgar and even Prince Varian, who had survived the slaughter, they made their way to the capital city to discuss what to do next. Arthas wasn't allowed in on this meeting, but that didn't prevent the prince from hiding away on one of the balconies and listening in. Anduin Lothar told all present what had happened, that the orcs were a real threat to the world and that they had to unite. King Taranis, he showed compassion to young Prince Varian, and he agreed that they should gather the nobles and make their plans. After the meeting, Taranis left Varian in Arthas' care, and Arthas had a very hard time trying to think of something to say. What do you say to someone whose father was murdered by a friend? So the one thing that came to mind was telling Varian about the foal that he'd seen born today. Emotions flitted across Varian's face: offense, disbelief, gratitude, yearning, understanding. Suddenly, the brown eyes filled with tears, and Varian Rin cried. Harsh, raking sounds of mourning for a father, a kingdom, a way of life that he hadn't been able to grieve until this moment. I hate winter, Varian sobbed. As the Alliance of Lordaeron formed together to fight against the Horde, Arthas grew close to the Varian, and he found out that Varian was already a skilled fighter, while Arthas simply sucked. He was frustrated about this fact, thinking that his new friend and the situation with the orcs, it would be a good enough reason to start training seriously, but instead the exact opposite happened. Any and all that could wield a sword were summoned to rise up and defend the land, so Arthas' training was put on hold, while the Alliance of Lordaeron, they managed to defeat the Horde and even capture their leader, Orgrim Doomhammer. Doomhammer was brought to the capital city to be placed as a prisoner within the Undercity, but he managed to break out only to be captured again. This time they decided to place him within one of the internment camps, these camps created to hold the orcs that surrendered after the first horde was defeated. The humans thought that this was a more humane alternative instead of outright executing the orcs, yet Doomhammer would not be caged and he broke out again. 2 years later, the Dark Portal reopened and the orcs returned for their second invasion, this time not to take the planet, this time they came to collect those powerful artifacts. 2 years and Arthas underwent a growth spurt. At the age of 11, he was a proper young man, yet his father still sheltered him and no real training was given. One day, Arthas found himself in the armory, where he and Varian they had sparred together with wooden training swords when they were young. He picked up one of the swords and he advanced to one of the old suits of armor, imagining it was one of the foul orcs that dared to enter their lands. Think you pass here, foul orc? You are in Lion's lands. I will show you mercy this once. Be gone and never return. Ah, but orcs didn't surrender or honor, so Arthas lunged in as he had seen Varian do. Strike, block, duck in under the swing, bring in the sword all the way across the body, then whirl, and the sword seemed to take on a life of its own, and it flew across the room. Standing there was the dwarven ambassador Muradin Bronzebeard, who had just witnessed the future king of Lordaeron pretend to fight orcs and throw his sword clear across the room. The dwarf was as embarrassed as Arthas was, so he asked the prince where he could find his father, and he quickly left him behind. Arthas had never been more embarrassed in his life. He didn't even bother to put away the wooden swords. This encounter, however, it did show Muradin that Arthas was in desperate need of training, and after discussing it with King Taranis, Muradin told the prince that he would become his teacher and he would teach Arthas all that he knew. But if at any time he would feel like he was wasting his time, like Arthas wasn't doing his best, the training would be over. Arthas couldn't believe that he would be trained by a dwarf, and not any dwarf, someone like Muradin. He was very excited to begin, but before they could get to the training, his attention was drawn by a young girl who had showed up as a guest. Young Jaina Proudmoore was on her way to Dalaran to study arts of magic, and the moment he saw her, Arthas knew that this girl was something special. She looked like she could be a great friend, someone to have fun with, a girl who didn't mind going for a swim on a hot day or being hit by a snowball in the face. He was excited to get to know her, but when he looked over at his father Uther, he recognized the look and he knew that he would probably not even have time to see her again before she left. His training with Muradin also began, and it was as rigorous and demanding as the dwarf had warned. Uther and Taranis, they also decided it was time that the prince's training was stepped up in other areas. His schedule became very tight. He would rise before dawn, grab a quick breakfast, and then go on an early ride with Muradin. The ride would end in a hike, always leaving the prince winded. Back home, a quick bath, lessons in history, mathematics, and calligraphy, a midday meal, then it was all afternoon in the chapel praying, meditating and discussing the nature of paladins and the rigorous disciplines they must observe. Dinner followed, and then Arthas stumbled into bed to sleep the dreamless sleep of the utterly exhausted. As he feared, there was little time to get to know Jaina Proudmoore, so the prince came up with a brilliant idea. He suggested to his father to escort Miss Proudmoore to Dalaran himself. His father was really pleased to see his son step up to the responsibilities. Jaina was also very happy, and Arthas got a chance to get out of his duties and spend some time with Jaina. This way, everyone was happy. On the way to Dalaran, Arthas and Jaina decided to sneak away as the guards were asleep, and they checked out one of the internment camps where they held the orcs. When they got close, Arthas saw nothing but monsters in the orcs, yet Jaina thought that they looked sad. She also noticed that they had children, and she wondered if they truly belonged in the camps. Arthas snorted and told her that they were killers, who knew what they would do once they were released. Jaina sighed softly, and they sneaked back to their camp to continue the journey in the morning, and finally reach Dalaran. Jaina was very excited to begin her studies. She felt the luckiest girl in the world, but Arthas, he had no affinity for magic, so he didn't feel at home. Outsiders weren't usually welcome in the first place, which Jaina thought was a shame, since she thought that it would be very nice to see Arthas again. As she spoke those words, she blushed, and for a moment Arthas forgot about the intimidation of the city, and he heartily agreed that it would be very nice to see Jaina Proudmoore again. Very nice indeed. For 3 years, Jaina did her thing in Dalaran, while Arthas focused on his own studies and training. At the age of 14, he was finally able to overcome his trainer and defeat Muradin. All the while, the training had been brutal. He had stubbornly refused any offers of healing, insisting that the pain was part of the process. And for that stubborn refusal, to whine or to quit, he was rewarded twofold. He learned well, and he won the respect of Muradin Bronzebeard.
How I miss those endless days in Lordaeron. Sharpening your skill with this dull blade. Forging you into a weapon meant to withstand the demands of a great destiny. You sure put them skills to use, didn't you, lad?
Now you might have wondered at the start of the video why I spent so much time talking about Arthas in the stable, about the moment that the fowl was born, but that's because the birth of that particular fowl would play a critical role in the rest of the prince's life. The horse was destined to belong to Arthas. He knew that from the moment that they locked eyes, and he was not going to be used for riding into battle. That was done by a completely different breed of horse. No, this one would be part of ceremonies and pleasure trips. He had toyed with names like Snowfall or Starlight, but in the end he decided to follow the informal tradition of Lordaeron Knights, and he gave his steed the name of equality. Where Uther's mount was called Steadfast, his father's Courageous, Arthas had decided to go with Invincible. One afternoon, the prince found himself having some free time, as his father was away on a diplomatic mission to Stromgarde, and Uther had gone with him. Even with the winter chill in the air, and autumn's last glorious days were gone, Invincible and Arthas found themselves riding down the glades. Snow started falling, and the next part is so crucial, described in such a beautiful way. This is taken from the novel Arthas, Rise of the Lich King. It was starting to snow again now, not the soft fat flakes that drifted lazily down, but small hard crystals that stung. Arthas frowned and pressed on, a little further, then he would turn back, he told himself. He might even stop at the Balnir farm. Had it been a while since he'd been there, Yoram and Yarim would likely be interested to see the magnificent horse that the gawky little cult had grown into. The impulse, having struck, now demanded to be obeyed, and Arthas turned Invincible with a subtle pressure from his left leg. The horse wheeled, obedient and completely in tune with his master's desires. The snow was picking up, tiny needles digging into his exposed skin, and Arthas pulled the cape up over his head for a little more protection. Invincible shook his head, his skin twitching as it did when he was being annoyed by insects in the summer. He galloped down the path, stretching his neck forward, enjoying the exertion every bit as much as Arthas. They were coming up on the jump soon, and shortly after that a warm stable for the steed and a hot mug of tea for his rider before they headed back to the palace. Arthas' face was starting to become numb with the cold, and his hands in their fine leather gloves weren't much better. He tightened his chilled hand over the reins, forcing his fingers to bend, and gathered himself as Invincible leaped. No, he reminded himself, flew! They flew over this jump like... Except they didn't fly. At the last minute, Arthas felt the hideous sensation of Invincible's rear hoof slipping away on the icy stone, and the horse flailed, neighing, his legs frantically trying to get a secure footing on thin air. Arthas' throat was suddenly raw, and he realized that he was screaming as Jack Stone, not smooth snow-encrusted grass, rushed up to meet him with lethal speed. He pulled hard on the reins, as if that could do something, as if anything could do something. The sound cut through his stupor, and he blinked his way back to consciousness with the bone-chilling shriek of a beast in agony clawing at his brain. He couldn't move at first, though his body spasmed of its own accord, trying to move towards the awful cries. Finally he was able to sit up. Pain shot through him, and he added his own gasp of agony to the hideous cacophony, and he realized he'd probably broken at least one rib, probably more. The snow had picked up, and was coming down hard and heavy now. He could barely see 3 feet in front of him. He shut out the pain, craning his neck, trying to find... Invincible. His eyes was drawn to movement, and the widening pool of crimson that melted the snow, that steamed in the cold. No, Arthas whispered, and struggled to his feet. The world went black around the edges, and he almost lost consciousness again, but through sheer will hung on. Slowly, he made his way to the panicked animal, struggling against the pain and the diving wind and snow that threatened to knock him over. Invincible was churning up the bloodied snow with 2 powerful unharmed rear legs, and 2 shattered forelegs. Arthas felt his stomach heave at the sight of the limbs, once so long and straight and clean and powerful, hang at odd angles as Invincible kept trying and failing to stand. Then the image was mercifully blurred by the snow and the rush of hot tears that spilled down his cheeks. He slugged towards his horse, sobbing, dropping to his knees beside the maddened animal and trying to do what? This was no scratch, to be quickly bound so that Invincible could lead to a warm stable and hot mash. Arthas reached for the animal's head, wanted to touch him, to calm him somehow, but Invincible was manic with agony, and he kept screaming. Help! There were priests and Sir Uther. Maybe they could heal. Pain, greater than physical, shot through the youth. The bishop had gone with his father to Stromgarde, as had Uther. There might be priests in another village, but Arthas didn't know where, and with the storm... He shrank back from the animal, covering his ears and closing his eyes, sobbing so that his whole body shook. With the storm, he could never find a healer, before Invincible either died of his injuries or froze to death. Arthas wasn't even sure he could find the Balnir homestead, even though it could not be far. The world was white, everywhere, save where the dying horse, who had trusted him enough to leap off an icy embankment, lay churning up a steaming crimson pool. Arthas knew what he had to do, and he couldn't do it. He would never know how long he sat there weeping, trying to shut out the sight and sound of his beloved horse in agony, until finally invincible struggle slowed. He lay in the snow, his sides heaving, his eyes rolling in torment. Arthas couldn't feel his face or limbs, but somehow he managed to move toward the beast. Every breath was agony, and he welcomed the pain. This was his fault. His fault. He took the great head in his lap, and for a brief, merciful moment, he wasn't sitting in the snow with a wounded beast, but sitting in a stable while a blood mare gave birth. For that moment, everything was all just beginning and not coming to the shocking, sickening, avoidable end. His tears fell on the horse's broad cheek. Invincible trembled, his brown eyes wide with now silent pain. Arthas removed his gloves and he ran his hand along the pink-grey muzzle, feeling the warmth of Invincible's breath against his hands. Then, slowly, he eased the horse's head from his lap, got to his feet and fumbled with the warmed hand for his sword. His feet sank in the red puddle of melted snow as he stood over the fallen animal. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry." Invincible regarded him calmly, trustingly, as if he somehow understood what was about to happen and the need for it. It was more than Arthas could bear, and for a moment tears again clouded his vision. He blinked them back hard. Arthas lifted the sword and brought it straight down. He did this right at least, pierced Invincible's great heart with a single strong blow from arms that should have been too chilled to do so. He felt the sword pierce skin, flesh, scrape against bone, and impale itself into the earth below. Invincible arced once, then shuddered and lay still. Joram and Yarim found him there sometime later, after the snow had tapered off, curled up tightly against the cooling corpse of a once glorious animal brimming with life and energy. As the elder man bent to pick him up, Arthas cried out with pain. "Sorry, lad," Joram said, his voice almost unbearably kind, "for hurting you, and for the accident." "Yes," Arthas said weakly, "the accident." He lost his footing. "And no wonder in this weather. That storm came on quickly. You're lucky you're alive. Come on, we'll get you inside and send someone to the palace." As he shifted in the farmer's strong grip, Arthas said, "Bury him? Here, so I can come visit?" Balnir exchanged glances with his son, then nodded. "Aye, of course. He was a noble steed." Arthas craned his neck to look at the body of the horse he had named Invincible. He would let them all think it was an accident, because he could not bear to tell anyone what he had done. And he made a vow then and there that if anyone else ever needed protection, that if sacrifices had to be made for the welfare of others, he would do it. Whatever it takes, he fought. Summer was full in blaze, and Prince Arthas and his entourage, they made way through Stormwind towards the Cathedral of Light. Today's the day the prince has been looking forward to all his life. The day that he would become a member of the Order of the Silver Hand. Yet, he felt a nagging sense that he didn't deserve the honor that was about to be bestowed upon him, and in a rare moment, Arthas had spoken of his feelings to Uther the Lightbringer.
"Lad, no one feels ready. No one feels he deserves it, and you know why? Because no one does. It's grace, pure and simple. We are inherently unworthy, simply because we're human. And as all human beings, I and elves and dwarves and all other races are flawed. But the light loves us anyway. It loves us for what we sometimes can rise to in rare moments. It loves us for what we can do to help others. And it loves us because we can help it, share its message by striving daily to be worthy, even though we understand that we can't ever truly become so. So stand there today, as I did, feeling that you can't possibly deserve it, or ever be worthy, and know that you're in the same place every single paladin has ever stood.
This reply both startled and comforted the prince. As he went through the ritual, he was accepted by the light and he became an official paladin amongst the Order of the Silver Hand. Varian Rin, Jaina Proudmoore, all those gathered applauded and congratulated him. He was now 19 years old and he didn't feel like simply lingering in the Palace of Lordran or do boring state visits. He wanted to do something fun, something that his position, his abilities would earn him, and he knew exactly what he wanted that something to be. Within Dalaran, Jaina Proudmoore had become quite good at her craft, and she was even chosen to become the apprentice of Archmage Antonidas. The High Elf Prince Kil'jaeden Sunstrider was very interested in the young mage, and he openly courted her. He'd even invited her to come and visit him in Quel'Thalas, but unfortunately for the prince, Jaina found Kil'jaeden to be more intimidating than someone she could actually fall for. She felt no such intimidation when her longtime friend made a surprise visit. Remember that Dalaran didn't usually allow strangers to come in, but the prince had been able to convince them that he was going to use his time there to study more about the history, the nature of magic, and other things that a king needed to know about. In truth though, he was actually there because he wanted to see Jaina, and studying was just extra. Arthas approached Jaina one day with 2 saddled horses to go out for a nice picnic together on a beautiful day, and at first Jaina tried to tell him that she needed to study, that she didn't have time for stuff like this, but Arthas was able to change her mind.
You'll be a magnificent king one day. No one can seem to deny you anything.
He laughed, and together they rode out, shared a simple but delicious picnic, and fell asleep in the heat of the day. When Jaina woke up, she didn't see Arthas anywhere around her, and her mind quickly shot to the threats surrounding them. There were still orcs on the loose, yet a mountain cat or a bear could just as easily take care of them. She went over the spells that she'd learned in her mind, until the attack came, sudden and silent. A thump against the back of her neck, and cold wetness was the first and only clue she had. Arthas had gone out to collect some snowballs from the mountain, to have the snowball fight that he dreamed of ever since they were young. Laughing cold and wet, he hugged her, and told her that he knew it all those years ago. He knew that she would be a girl to have fun with, someone who wouldn't mind going for a swim on a hot summer day, or getting a snowball in the face. His arm encircled her as firmly as an iron band. He continued to touch her face, trailing strong calloused fingers down the curve of her cheek. Jaina, he said quietly, and she shivered, but not from the cold, not this time. It was not proper. She should move back. Instead, she lifted her face and closed her eyes. The kiss was gentle at first, soft and sweet, the first Jaina had ever known. From that moment on, the young lovers would steal moments here and there to sneak a kiss or a hug, since openly loving each other, that would just feed the rumor mill. As Jaina came back from practicing her fire spells one day, Arthas was waiting for her, and he dragged her into the shadows for a loving embrace. What they didn't know was that Kil'jaeden had followed Jaina to bring back the tome that she had dropped on the floor, and as he caught them in their act, he was furious. Anger and outrage fairly crackled around the mage. He was powerful, and Arthas knew that if it came to it, he wouldn't stand a chance. Kil'jaeden kept his composure though, and with clenched fist he hissed,
"Ashamed of her, are you, Arthas? Is she only worth your time and attention if no one knows about her?"
Arthas' eyes narrowed. "I had fought to avoid the ravages of the rumor mill," he said quietly. "You know how those things work, Kil, don't you? Someone says something and next thing you know, it's believed to be true. I will protect her reputation by..."
"Protect?"
Kil'jaeden barked the words.
"If you cared about her, you would court her openly, proudly. Any man would."
He looked at Jaina, and the anger was gone, replaced by a fleeting expression of pain. Then that too disappeared, and Jaina looked down.
"I will leave you two to your tryst, and do not fear, I will say nothing."
Kil'jaeden kept his word, and their relationship continued. Although there had been no public announcements, they both knew that their parents had spoke with one another, and that there was an agreement to let the courtship continue. So it was that Arthas, already beloved by his people, was sent on more and more diplomatic matters, while Jaina was usually chosen to deliver messages from Dalaran to the capital city. Holidays and special celebrations were also cherished moments where they could be together, so Arthas traveled to Jaina for the Midsummer Fire Festival, as she joined him during the celebration of Hollow's End. It's tradition during this time to burn the Wickerman and burn away anything you do not wish to take with you into the quiet, deep reflection time provided by winter's enforced inactivity. As a special surprise, Arthas introduced Jaina to his countrymen and he asked her to give them all a show. Fire itself spawned from her hands, instantly setting the Wickerman ablaze, and the crowd cheered. Arthas leaned in close and whispered that she did a spectacular job, so good in fact that they'll demand her to come back each year to light the Wickerman again. She turned to look at him and asked,
"Would that be a problem?"
Arthas caught his breath and he regarded her. She'd always been attracted to him and he'd liked her from the moment they'd met, but now he couldn't help but see her, quite literally, in a whole new light. It took a moment for him to find his voice and he softly said, No, it wouldn't be a problem at all. They joined the celebration until Arthas led Jaina back to his quarters. They kissed and Jaina whispered,
"Are we ready for this?"
"I am, if you are," he whispered back. There have been other opportunities for Arthas to share this moment with someone. There was Tarifa, for example, as he went to inspect the Orcish gladiator Thrall at the internment camp. She was sent by Blackmorn to make the prince feel at home, yet he had declined her and she had not been the first either. But Jaina was special, and he was ready to bring this girl the rest of the way into his heart. Under the light of the Wickerman, they shared their love, and later, when the Wickerman had finally burned out, Jaina told the prince that no one seemed to be able to deny him anything. Least of all her. He clutched her to him then, a sudden cold shivering over him, though he had no idea why. "Don't deny me, Jaina. Don't ever deny me, please." She looked up at him, eyes glittering in the cool moonlight.
"I never would, Arthas. Never."
The two young lovers continued their relationship, and during the Feast of Winterveil, it became clear that to the family, Jaina was becoming more and more than just the daughter of the ruler of Kaltaras. Arthas thought to himself that it was only the logical next step, yet the thought of it all made him feel uneasy. When Jaina jokingly told him that the children will almost certainly be blonde, the bomb inside exploded. He didn't feel ready for this. He was afraid that he would ruin it all. What if he would become a bad husband or a bad king? What if, and with those thoughts racing through his mind, he came to the conclusion that he wasn't ready yet. Not ready for children, not ready for the weight of the crown, the relationship with Jaina. He tried to explain that he wasn't ready, and of course she was hurt. She had even asked him if they were ready for this on the night that they came together. But she took a deep breath and she steadied herself. It was alright. She honestly didn't understand it, but it would be alright eventually. They attended the ball together, despite how awkward and painful it felt. Attending a ball together after just breaking up, that must have been horrible. The prince looked out at the blanket of white snow and the moon-silvered lake, and he wondered to himself why everything bad seemed to happen during winter. Breaking off with Jaina would soon be the least of his worries, since this brings us close to the events of Warcraft 3. That story I'll save for next week, the events of Warcraft 3, but before we leave for today, we do need to talk about Ner'zhul and Kel'Thuzad. Remember that the Orcish shaman Ner'zhul, he ended up in front of Kil'jaeden, where he was tortured for a while, until Kil'jaeden came up with a new plan and purpose. The Orcs' failure to conquer the world for the Burning Legion, it forced Kil'jaeden to create a new army to sow chaos throughout the kingdoms of Azeroth. This new army could not be allowed to fall prey to the same petty rivalries and infighting that had plagued the Horde. It would have to be merciless and single-minded in its mission. This time, Kil'jaeden could not afford to fail. Holding Ner'zhul's spirit helpless in stasis, Kil'jaeden gave him one last chance to serve the Legion or suffer eternal torment. Once again, Ner'zhul recklessly agreed to the demon's pact. His spirit was placed within a specially crafted block of diamond hard ice gathered from the far reaches of the twisting nether. Encased within the frozen cask, Ner'zhul felt his consciousness expand 10,000-fold. Warped by the demonic chaotic powers, Ner'zhul became a spectral being of unfathomable power. At that moment, the orc known as Ner'zhul was shattered forever, and the Lich King was born. Kil'jaeden then cast Ner'zhul's icy cask back into the world of Azeroth. The hardened crystal streaked across the night sky and smashed into the desolate Arctic continent of Northrend, burying itself deep within the ice-crowned glacier. The frozen crystal, warped and scarred by its violent descent, it came to resemble a throne, and Ner'zhul's vengeful spirit soon stirred within, linked to the armor, the blade Frostmourne, and the helm of damnation. From the frozen throne, Ner'zhul began to experiment with his newfound powers. He was able to touch the minds of Northrend's inhabitants, and he was able to enslave them. He was able to cause the plague of undeath, which did not only kill, but it also converted the fallen into undead servants. For months he gathered forces, yet his conquest did not go unchallenged. The Nerubians, they were immune to his mind control and even to his plague, yet there were other means of converting them. The War of the Spider erupted, with the aid of the Dreadlords and Ner'zhul's undead warriors. The Lich King invaded Azul Nerub, and he brought the temple crashing down upon the Spider Lord's heads.
I once ruled Azul Nerub. Then came a war I could not win. I was forced into servitude.
Though the Nerubians were immune to his plague, Ner'zhul's growing necromantic powers, it allowed him to raise the Spider Warriors' corpses and bend them to his will. As a testament to their tenacity and fearlessness, Ner'zhul adopted the Nerubians' distinctive architectural style for his own fortresses and structures. Left to rule his kingdom unopposed, the Lich King began preparing for his true mission in the world. Reaching out into human lands with his vast consciousness, the Lich King called out to any dark soul that would listen, and Archmage Kel'Thuzad was one of them, willing to embrace the whispers.
I was cast out by my comrades, exiled, forced to wander the frozen wastes. But I was not alone, not entirely. The voice, now my only companion, guided me to my destination. Strange, nightmarish creatures awaited me at the entrance. I felt my blood run cold as Icecrown itself. Inside, I bore witness to horrific acts, demonstrations of power that could be mine for the asking. Terrified, I ran, but did not get far. All too soon, my choice was made. Too late did I realize that such power does not come without a price.
Ner'zhul convinced him to come to Northrend, and even though the in-game book Kel'Thuzad and the Forming of the Scourge, it claims that Kel'Thuzad gave himself up willingly, his short story tells a different tale. As the fallen Nerubian king Anubarak gives Kel'Thuzad a tour of Naxxramas, the mage begins to doubt. The things that are shown to him, they were terrifying and sickening. There was a demonstration of the plague where a human woman and a human man, they were locked inside a cage. The female was sick. She begged Kel'Thuzad to show mercy, to burn her body and end her misery, but Kel'Thuzad, he simply looked away and he whispered to Anubarak to make her quiet. In response, Anubarak pierced her heart and dropped the corpse on the floor, causing the man to howl with anguish, but that was just the start. The female rose as an undead servant. She told her husband to get away from her, that she would hurt him. She pushed him away, causing him to fly against the cell bars and slid down. She was unable to control herself as the transformation was completed, and she leaped at her husband, lashing out, baring her teeth. The man screamed, and blood spurted onto the cell floor. Kel'Thuzad flinched away. Closing his eyes didn't help. He could still hear unspeakable sounds. Ripping, shredding, chewing. A soft, wretched mewling that he very much feared meant that the undead woman was aware of her actions on some level, but unable to stop herself. Sickened and horrified, he teleported out of Naxxramas altogether. He staggered a little distance away and he threw up. Finding a patch of unsullied snow, he scooped up handfuls and scrubbed viciously at his mouth and face. It felt as if he would never be clean again. What had he gotten himself involved in? There was no escape though, as Kel'Thuzad was escorted back in front of Ner'zhul, who explained to him that his powers were beyond comprehension, that he could read Kel'Thuzad's mind as if he was reading a book. No schemes or future plans of overthrowing the Lich King would ever be accomplished, and not even death is a certainty when dealing with the Lich King. Serving this spectral being, the Lich King, as Kel'Thuzad was beginning to think of him, would assuredly bring Kel'Thuzad great power, and damn him for all eternity. But that knowledge came far too late. Besides, damnation, it had little meaning without the prospect of true death. I am yours. I swear it, he said hoarsely, and Kel'Thuzad pledged his loyalty to the Lich King. He worked on using his connections, his fortune, the power of illusion, persuasion, sickness and force to spread the plague across the lands of Lordaeron and establish the Lich King's hold upon Azeroth.
We've received reports that the orcs are regrouping. Certainly the recent attacks against the internment camps are evidence enough. Agreed. The Horde is on the move.
This is absurd. My nation will not stand by and watch as the Horde masses on our very doorstep.
The orcs are not our primary concern here. How many times must I repeat myself?
King Tyrannus, you must heed my warning.
This plague that has gripped the Northlands could have dire ramifications.
Wizards are just paranoid. Let's keep all this in perspective. Even if this plague does pose a threat to us, what are you proposing that we do?
It is simple. As I have said, the Kirin Tor are already prepared to place the villages under strict quarantine.
I will not institute quarantine without proof of your claims, Ambassador. The people of Lordaeron have suffered enough without becoming prisoners in their own lands.
Yet prisoners they are, good king.
What is the meaning of this? Who are you?
Humanity is in peril. The tides of darkness have come again, and the whole world is poised upon the brink of war.
Enough of this. Guards, remove this madman.
Hear me. The only hope for your people is to travel west, to the forgotten lands of Kalimdor.
Travel west? Are you mad?
Old Ambassador, I don't know who you are or what you believe, but this is not the time for rambling prophets. Our lands are beset by conflict, but it shall be we who decide how best to protect our people, not you. Now, be gone!
The Prophet Medivh is trying to warn the world about the coming invasion of the Burning Legion, and he tells them all to travel west. King Tyrannus is not willing to listen and tells Medivh that they'll be the ones to decide how best to protect their people. In the meantime, reports are becoming in that a plague is spreading across the lands. Archmage Antonidas also received a visit from Medivh, but he agrees with King Tyrannus and he sends the Prophet away. To investigate the plague, to find out what's going on, he sends his apprentice Jaina Proudmoore to team up with Prince Arthas, and together they would get to the bottom of this mystery.
We must help her! Stay your blade, Captain. She can take care of herself. Gentlemen, meet Miss Jaina Proudmoore, Special Agent to the Kirin Tor, and one of the most talented sorceresses in the land. Looks like you haven't lost your touch. It's good to see you again, Jaina.
You too, Arthas. It's been a while since a prince escorted me anywhere.
Their reunion is a little bit awkward at first, but Arthas can't sleep at night and he decides to approach Jaina and talk. He had missed her very much and she felt exactly the same. So after all was said and done, after they found out what was going on, saved the world, after their job was done, they would work on new beginnings. They'd see it through together, whatever it took.
What were those creatures, Sergeant?
Undead, my lord. This whole village has gone mad. We did our best to defend the villagers, but...
We'll get to the bottom of this.
It's as if the land around that granary is dying.
Could the grain itself be plagued?
Let's hope not. Those crates bear the regional seal of Anderhall, the distribution center for the northern boroughs. If this grain can spread the plague, there's no telling how many villages might be affected.
Their team found out that the plague was being spread through the grain, so they did their very best to stop it from spreading any further. They even encountered necromancers and their leader Kel'Thuzad, who told them about the cult of the damned, the Dreadlord Morgannus, and he told them to leave well enough alone, that their curiosity would be the end of them. But Arthas could not walk away. Remember the promise he had made when he failed Invincible? He would stop at nothing to try and protect his people. So he pushed Jaina and his men until eventually they got their hands on Kel'Thuzad.
Naive fool. My death will make little difference in the long run. For now, the scourging of this land begins.
Killing the leader of the cult did not prevent the citizens from eating the grain that had already been shipped out. At Hearthglen, they figured out that the plague was not only meant to kill, it also converted those who died from it into the undead. Arthas became obsessed about stopping all of this, about saving his people. He became very distant and unwilling to listen to those close to him, like Uther and Jaina, and not even the Prophet Medivh was able to push him away from this path. He had to stop Morgannus. He had to destroy each crate of grain that they could find, but at Stratholme, they made a terrible discovery.
Glad you could make it, Uther.
Watch your tone with me, boy. You may be the prince, but I'm still your superior as a paladin.
As if I could forget. Listen, Uther. There's something about the plague you should know. Oh no. We're too late. These people have all been infected. They may look fine now, but it's just a matter of time before they turn into the undead. This entire city must be purged.
What? How can you even consider that? There's got to be some other way.
Damn it, Uther. As your future king, I order you to purge this city!
You are not my king yet, boy. Nor would I obey that command even if you were.
Then I must consider this an act of treason.
Treason? Have you lost your mind, Arthas?
Lord Uther, by my right of succession and the sovereignty of my crown, I hereby relieve you of your command and suspend your paladins from service.
Arthas, you can't just...
It's done! Those of you who have the will to save this land, follow me! The rest of you, get out of my sight!
You've just crossed a terrible threshold, Arthas.
Jaina?
I'm sorry, Arthas. I can't watch you do this.
Jaina tried to convince Arthas not to go through with this, tried to buy some time to think of alternative options, but he saw no other way. He even asked her what she would want, a clean death as a living, thinking human, or to be raised as an undead to attack anything you've ever loved. Jaina knew deep down that he was right, that she would rather die as a living being, but that's her personal choice, and they couldn't make that choice for everyone. There were innocents in that city, children even, yet Arthas had made his choice. Uther, Jaina, and some of the men, they did not agree with what the prince was about to do, so they turned away and they turned their back on him. Jaina, despite her promise, had denied him, yet some of the men, they actually agreed with the prince. They'd rather be cut into 1,000 pieces than be turned into the undead, so they went about their gruesome job of slaughtering the men, women and children inside the city. Arthas thought that it would get easier as he pushed on, but it only became harder. The light on his weapon started to dim. The citizens tried to fight back, but they were no match against trained soldiers and a trained paladin. Eventually, the Dreadlord Morgannus called out to the prince and taunted him to gather his forces and meet him in the Arctic lands of Northrend.
Your journey has just begun, young prince. Gather your forces and meet me in the Arctic land of Northrend. It is there that we shall settle the score between us. It is there that your true destiny...
I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth if I have to. Do you hear me? To the ends of the earth!
In Northrend, Arthas found Muradin Bronzebeard fighting against the undead. He had not expected to find his old friend and mentor all the way up in the cold lands, but it was a sight for sore eyes. Muradin explained the reason why they were there, that his people had always been interested in rare items. The dwarf had been to Northrend many times before, and they found that there's a force growing in Northrend, which Muradin believes will not be satisfied with just sitting there. He has a feeling that this power is also behind the undead, so they're trying to discover what exactly is going on. Arthas explains to Muradin what had happened back home, his people turning into the undead, the choices he had to make, but he didn't tell Muradin all the details about what happened at Stratholme. He wasn't certain if Muradin would understand the awful necessity of what Arthas had been forced to do.
Alright, Muradin. What were you doing up here anyway?
Well, lad, there's an ancient waygate that lies somewhere in this glacial wasteland. Supposedly it transports you to a hidden vault where a rune blade named Frostmourne is held. We came here to recover Frostmourne.
The dwarf explains that they're searching for a very special artifact, a rune blade called Frostmourne, and hearing the name makes Arthas think back to a dream he had about a ruined blade which he used to stab Invincible with. Instead of ending the beast's life as he had done in his real life, Invincible rose up even stronger than before. He was certain that finding the blade and getting his revenge was his destiny, so they would help out Muradin with finding the artifacts, and Muradin would help them with fighting against Mal'Ganis. They worked on setting up a base, but back home, King Terenas had found out what Arthas had done, and he did not agree with his son's choices.
I apologize, emissary, but the prince is away on an errand. What brings you to this desolate place?
By royal edict, you men are to return to Lordaeron immediately. Lord Uther has convinced the king to recall this expedition.
We're to just pick up and leave?
That's correct. My men report that the roads from here to the shore are held by the undead. You'll need to find an alternate route back to your ships.
To hell with the undead. We'll cut our way through the woods, men.
Captain, why are the guards not at their posts?
Well, my lord, your father had our troops recalled at Lord Uther's request.
Uther had my troops recalled? Damn it! If my warriors abandon me, I'll never defeat Mal'Ganis. The ships must be burned before the men reach the shore.
Isn't that a bit much, lad?
Burned down to their frames. No one goes home until our job here is done. We'll need more men to fight our way through the undead.
I've come across a few mercenary camps up here. Perhaps we can hire a few of them.
Damn Uther for forcing me to do this. Well done. Only one ship remains.
Let's do this!
Prince Arthas? Quickly, my warriors! These murderous creatures have burned our ships and robbed you of your way home. Slay them all in the name of Lordaeron.
Damn beasts! Kill them all! Our ships are ruined. What will we do now?
Listen to me, all of you. There is no way home for any of us save through victory. In this land, we will stand or fall together. Now, return to the base and man your posts.
Muradin couldn't believe his eyes. This was not the same Arthas that he had trained, that joined the Order of the Silver Hands, the future king of Lordaeron. Was vengeance all that important to Arthas?
Spare me, Muradin. You weren't there to see what Mal'Ganis did to my homeland.
The Dark Lord said you would come. This is where your journey ends, boy. Trapped and freezing at the roof of the world, with only death to sing the tale of your doom.
This looks bad. We're completely surrounded.
There's still one chance. Help me claim Frostmourne. If it's as powerful as you said, it might tilt the scales in our favor.
I have a bad feeling about this, lad. But I promised I'd see this through.
Arthas and Muradin left their troops behind to defend the base, while they went out to find Frostmourne.
Behold, Muradin, our salvation. Frostmourne.
Halt, lad. There's an inscription on the dais. It's a warning. It says, "Whomsoever takes up this blade shall wield power eternal. Just as the blade rends flesh, so must power scar the spirit." Oh, I should have known.
the blade is cursed. Let's get the hell out of here.
I would gladly bear any curse to save my homeland.
Leave it be, Arthas. Forget this business and lead your men home.
Damn the men! Nothing shall prevent me from having my revenge, old friend. Not even you. Now, I call out to the spirits of this place. I will give anything or pay any price, if only you will help me save my people.
Muradin was knocked out, and for a moment Arthas desperately tried to call on the light to save his old friends, but the blade, it was whispering to him. The Lich King was calling, and the power of Frostmourne, his vengeance upon Mal'Ganis, that was all that mattered. As the prince took the blade, a cold shot through him, shivering up his arm, spreading over his body and into his heart. It was painful for a moment, and he knew a hint of alarm, and then suddenly it was all right. It was all right. Frostmourne was his, and he was its, and its voice was speaking, whispering, caressing inside his mind, as if it had always been there. He left his old friend behind in the snow, and he claimed his revenge.
So, you've taken up Frostmourne at the expense of your comrades' lives, just as the Dark Lord said you would. You're stronger than I thought.
You waste your breath, Mal'Ganis. I heed only the voice of Frostmourne now.
You hear the voice of the Dark Lord. He whispers to you through the blade you wield. What does he say, young human? What does the Dark Lord of the Dead tell you now?
He tells me that the time for my vengeance has come.
What? He can't possibly mean to...
It is finished.
The prince left his troops behind as he wandered into the frozen wastelands of Northrend, listening to the maddening voice of Frostmourne. The blade was created by the Dreadlords, was tossed out by Ner'zhul from the ice that encased him. He had planned for all of this, for Arthas to become his champion, for the blade to steal a piece of his soul, turning the former Paladin into the first of the Death Knights created by the Lich King. Some of his men were turned to the Death Knights as well, and with his soul cast aside, his sanity shattered, Arthas led the Scourge back home, where they were greeted with open arms.
Ah, my son. You no longer need to sacrifice for your people. You no longer need to bear the weight of your crown. I've taken care of everything.
What is this? What are you doing, my son?
Succeeding you, father.
This kingdom shall fall, and from the ashes shall arise a new order that will shake the very foundations of the world.
All those gathered to welcome the prince home were slaughtered and converted. We don't know what happened to Arthas' sister Kaelia or his mother, so perhaps they survived the fall of their kingdom. It didn't matter much to Arthas though. He left the killing to his servants while making his way to the grave of an old friend. It had been 7 years since he was forced to put down Invincible, but now he had the power to make it alright again. He lifted his hands, pulling the no longer dead thing from its slumber in the cool dark earth. Invincible was his again. It was all part of his destiny, yet fate seemed to have a sense of humor, since Ner'zhul was not just sent back to create a few undead. He was sent back with a mission to get the world ready for another invasion of the Burning Legion, and to get this started, they had to bring back the necromancer Kel'Thuzad. Under the watchful eyes of the Dreadlord Tychondrius, they brought together the Cult of the Damned, they took out several of the Paladins, and they gathered Kel'Thuzad remains from Anderhal. The remains were badly decomposed though, so they couldn't be transported as they were. They had to collect a very special container, which was currently in the possession of Arthas' former mentor and friend.
Your father ruled this land for 70 years, and you've ground it to dust in a matter of days.
Very dramatic, Uther. Give me the urn, and I'll make sure you die quickly.
The urn holds your father's ashes, Arthas. What? Were you hoping to piss on them one last time before you left his kingdom to rot?
I didn't know what it held. Nor does it matter. I'll take what I came for one way or another.
Uther did not earn the Lightbringer title for nothing, and he nearly took out Arthas in this fight. Yet the Runeblade Frostmourne, combined with the powers of the Lich King, they were able to snuff out even the brightest of lights.
I dearly hope that there's a special place in hell waiting for you, Arthas.
We may never know, Uther. I intend to live forever.
After pouring out the contents of the urn, the ashes of King Tyrannus took flight, shouting the Death Knights and making it hard to breathe, making the fallen prince gag and drop to his knees. A moment later, he composed himself and he ordered one of his scourge to place the remains of the necromancer in the urn, ready to be transported to the magical city of Quel'Thalas. In order to resurrect Kel'Thuzad as a Lich, they had to find an incredibly powerful magical source, and as luck would have it, the High Elves of Quel'Thalas, they had the Sunwell, which would be perfect for the job. This city had been able to stand up against trolls, against the orcs riding dragons, but this time there was a traitor from within, Darkandravir, who helped Arthas with gaining access into the kingdom. The High Elves, amongst them Lady Liadrin, Ranger General Sylvanas Windrunner, they tried to stop the army of undead that was marching upon their lands, literally leaving a scar behind them as they marched. They did their very best, but nothing would stand in the way of death, and Sylvanas was not even granted the peace of the afterlife.
Finish it. I deserve a clean death.
After all you've put me through, woman, the last thing I'll give you is the peace of death.
No, you wouldn't dare.
Transformed into a banshee, she was forced to obey Arthas and watched as he slaughtered the rest of her people and even her king and Astarion Sunstrider. Her kingdom fell as Arthas claimed the Sunwell.
Citizens of Silvermoon, I have given you ample opportunities to surrender, but you have stubbornly refused. Know that today, your entire race and your ancient heritage will end. Death itself has come to claim the high home of the elves. Now arise, Kel'Thuzad, and serve the Lich King once again.
I am reborn as promised. The Lich King has granted me eternal life.
With Kel'Thuzad resurrected as a Lich, the next step was to bring Archimonde into the world, and to do this, they had to collect the Book of Medivh, which contained incantations powerful enough to summon the Demon Lords. This book was kept in the magical city of Dalaran, and as Arthas and the Scourge arrived, Jaina pleaded with Antonidas to let her stay and help. Maybe she could reason with Arthas, maybe she could do something, but the Archmage, he told her to go. One more or less would make very little difference, and Jaina had other duties now. She was told by the Prophet Medivh to lead the survivors of Lordaeron, so her duties, they called her elsewhere, while Arthas murdered those inside, amongst them Archmage Antonidas. He claimed the book, and eventually Kel'Thuzad summoned Archimonde into the world.
Come forth, Lord Archimonde. Enter this world, and let us bask in your power. Tremble, mortals, and despair. Doom has come to this world. You have done well, little Lich. My plan worked perfectly.
Lord Archimonde, all the preparations have been made.
Very well, Tychondrius. Since the Lich King is of no further use to me, you Dreadlords will now command the Scourge.
As you wish, Lord Archimonde.
Soon, I will order the invasion to begin. But first, I will make an example of these paltry wizards by crushing their city into the ashes of history.
This has got to be a joke. What happens to us now?
Be patient, young Death Knight. The Lich King foresaw this as well. You may yet have a part to play in his grand design.